Evening. It was late in the evening, the stars are out, the moon was full, and this was a good night for people to get together. But for a young 5-year-old boy, this was one of the nights that he wishes he would be hiding from such a night. The boy who was wishing to hide tonight was Naruto, the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko. He is, currently, wearing shorts, a white t-shirt with an orange Uzumaki symbol on the front, and shinobi sandals. Unfortunately, unlike many other children, Naruto was malnourished since he barely has anything to eat, except for what he finds in the garbage or when the only nice people to him were the ramen chief and his daughter at Ichiraka Ramen. He was running for his life, since right behind him was a group of angry villagers, some of which were shinobis. As he was running, Naruto could hear the people screaming at him, "We'll get you, demon," and "You'll pay for what you did." He ran towards the village gates, where he hoped that the shinobi guards were there to help him out since they were one of the few people that actually didn't give him the evil glare. Unfortunately, they weren't there. No one was at the gate post for the moment, so Naruto kept running out of the village, with a mob still chased after him. Through the forest, while waving and weaving past trees and bushes, Naruto was trying to shake the angry, bloodthirsty mob behind him. As he ran, he suddenly tripped, where he fell from a hill covered in thick trees and bushes. He collided with the trees and bushes, giving him a few bruises and cuts from the fall. Naruto fell near an edge, where it was near a fast-moving river where rapids were located. Normally, the river moved so calmly that it looked like a clear, calm lake, but it moves fast when a thunderstorm was fast approaching, where Naruto looked up to see the dark clouds starting to form and high winds were increasing. Naruto tried to get up, but he found that his foot ached too much. He figured that he must have twisted it. Even though his foot was giving him so much pain, Naruto forced himself up on his feet to continue to run. As he walked, he hoped that the third Hokage would arrive soon, since he is the only other person that Naruto trusts since the third always tried to look out for him. Unfortunately, the third Hokage was away from the village at the moment. He was currently in Suna, talking over with the current peace treaty that Konoha and Suna have. Naruto traveled for a bit, hoping he got away from the mob, but that wasn't the case. Naruto turned around to see several people of the mob. Once they spotted Naruto, they quickly called everyone else. Naruto tried to get away, but was caught by one of the people. Once he was caught, he tried to get away, but mob had him completely pinned to the tree, which they all then began to beat him badly. For almost 15 minutes, Naruto was beaten and cut very badly, near the point of death. As he laid on the ground, with bruises and blood coming out from him, the leader of the mob grabbed what was left of his now torn shirt and held him above the rapid, moving river. "For the Yondaime Hokage!" the leader of the mob yelled out, which the rest of the people also shout out. He tossed Naruto into the river, which Naruto fell into the fast-moving water that quickly rushed him down whatever place it led. The villagers watched with amusement and joy, knowing that they avenged the people that they lost from the Kyuubi, as well as avenging the fourth Hokage just as the thunderstorm started to rain. They then left in a hurry, since they don't want to be caught by the third Hokage's more loyal guards from what they just done. As they walked back home, with joy and happiness in their hearts, they have no idea what turn of events they just unleashed into the world. Fire Country Border. At the west of the Fire Country, near its border, a group of Kyomonin were quickly on their way back home from a mission. It was early evening, and they were right now trying to find a good place to camp for the night so they can get a fresh start tomorrow morning and be back home by noon. As they continue to look for a good spot, the leader of the four-man team was Darui, a young, newly appointed jonin. He had white, fuzzy, spike hair around his head, while having some of it cover up his left eye. He had dark skin, wearing his own jounin-style uniform. They continued to move forward until one of Darui's teammates pointed out a waterfall. The waterfall was tall, about 3 stories high. The teammate pointed to a cave, which looked big enough for everyone to share, which was a good thing since they can see a powerful thunderstorm coming their way. Once they checked the cave out, they all went in to get themselves ready for some sleep. Darui was the last one to go in, but just before he went in, He looked at the waterfall to make sure that any water won't come inside the cave. It was then that he notices something. Right before him, a body of a young child came falling down the waterfall, falling towards the rocky bottom that would surely kill him. Darui quickly ran and jumped at the young child. Darui caught the boy at the last second before the young child hit the rapids. Once he caught him, he checked not only to see blood on his hands. He checked closely to see that it was a young boy with spiky blonde hair. The boy was covered in bruises, cuts, blood, and his body almost frozen, but Darui could feel a small heartbeat and a faint pulse. He quickly went back to his team. Inside, his team had already gotten a nice warm fire when they saw Darui coming inside very quickly. He got his good friend, C, to help. C was young Chunin, a mid-teen. C looked to see that Darui was holding onto a very injured boy. Darui explained that he just caught the boy from hitting the rapids. Darui ordered him to try and save him, which C agreed since he was a training medic nin, so the boy's life was on his hands. Darui watched, along with his other two teammates, as C did everything on helping the blonde-haired boy. C took off the boy's clothing and laid him down near the fire to help warm him up. He then used medical jutsu to cure him of his injuries. After about a half hour of waiting, C finished all the basic things he could do for the young boy, which he turned to Darui. "Well, is he going to be all right?" asked Darui. "I did everything I could to help him. The only problem now is that he has developed hyperthermia, most likely from staying inside the freezing water, as well as the injuries. The only thing we can do now is keep his body warm and hope for the best. The rest is up to him," answered C. Darui just looked at the boy and could feel that he is someone special just by looking at him, as well as seeing on how he was still alive from coming down the waterfall with all the bruises and injuries he had. His thoughts were broken when C continued to talk. "Darui, there's something you should see." Darui saw C put some chirk on the boy's stomach. They were both seeing a seal appear in front of them, which they were amazed on what Darui had saved. They guessed that this boy is actually a Jinchuriki, but didn't know which one. Darui decided to bring him back to Kumo since he believed that the Raikage would know what to do next. Morning. It was sunrise when Darui and his team started to wake up. It was a rough night for Darui since he had to think about what he was going to say to the Raikage on how he and his team had somehow found a possible Jinchuriki. But of course, before he even thought about that, he had to see if the boy even lived since he was in a dead-like state from last night. C also woke up after having some rest and to check to see if the boy lived. Everyone in Darui's team woke up, which Darui and C went to check on the boy that was lying near them. C checked to see if the boy had survived the night or not. C checked and smiled to see that he lived. He then told Darui that the boy would live and that he is healing pretty nicely and quickly. Darui was glad about that, but he heard C that it will still be another day before the boy can be well enough to wake up. Darui acknowledged this, which he then said that they would take the boy back to Kumo and see what the Raikage would do with him. Once they packed up, C took the blonde boy and placed him on his shoulders, which they then all left to Kumo at full speed. Konoha. It was morning when the third and his loyal Umbu squad came back to Konoha from his meeting with the Kazekage and Suna. As he walks towards the Hokage Tower, he decided to visit Naruto since he wanted to make sure that he was still safe since he wasn't here for the week. He made his way towards Naruto's apartment, which on the way he told his Umbu squad to go and get some rest and send another squad with him. They acknowledge it, which they shunned Shin away to the Umbu headquarters. The third made it to Naruto's apartment building, which he walked up the stairs. Once he made it, he spotted the graffiti door on Naruto's apartment, which he could only sigh in sadness on seeing an innocent boy live like this. As he looked on, he couldn't help but remember on what his predecessor, the Yondaime Hokage, think on what they were doing to Naruto, as Naruto was the fourth only living son. He knocked on the door to see if Naruto was awake. He waited a few moments to only not get a response, which he then knocked again. He was getting worried since he has waited for more than 5 minutes. He decided to go in to check if Naruto was all right. Inside, the third looked around to see that Naruto wasn't inside his apartment, which he then checked to see Naruto's bed was unmade and looked unused since last time. He was really starting to get worried, which he then sensed the new Umbu team coming towards him. He quickly went outside to meet his Umbu squad that had just arrived. Umbu, quickly I want you to go and check every square inch of Konoha. Find Naruto Uzumaki now. Once you located him, come back to my office with him, understand? Order the third. The Umbu nodded and went to find Naruto. The third quickly went to the Hokage Tower to wait to and hear about Naruto being found. As he walked towards the Hokage Tower, he couldn't help but blame himself for not taking Naruto with him, since he was a lot more safer with him than being in Konoha alone. Plus, he could have made friends with one of the Kazekage's children that seemed to be around the same age as Naruto. Later, it was noon when the third finally got a report from the Umbu squad that he sent out to find Naruto. Unfortunately, when they arrived, the third didn't see Naruto's with either one of them. He then asked them to investigate on what happened to him earlier in that morning. Now, he was just waiting on what the investigation has found. He was about to go get lunch when his Umbu came back to give the report on the investigation. He was informed that a mob formed against Naruto just nearly over yesterday afternoon, then explained that the people from the mob came back to the village through the main gate, which indicated that Naruto was chased outside the village. But they couldn't find him from the possible trail that they located, only that they found dried blood near a river that they guessed before the storm hit yesterday, that Naruto was thrown into the river when it was rushing and moving too rapidly for a young boy to stay alive. Plus, the river was moving too fast that following him would be a waste of time. Judging from what the Umbu found, they said that the possibility that Naruto was dead was likely, since just past the border where the river lead to a waterfall with jagged rocks in the bottom, Naruto would have fallen into it, possibly killed once on impact. The third had his face down, with sadness, which he then rose with fury unseen in many years. I'm ordering an emergency council meeting of both shinobi and civilian council members. I want a full explanation on all this from them. Get them here. Now, order the third. The Umbu acknowledged, which they all left to immediately inform the council members of the meeting. As they left, the third looked at the Yondame's picture on top of the shelves, along with the Shodame and 9-Dame Hokages. Minato, I am sorry. I have failed you and your son, thought the third as he gotten ready to face the Council Konoha council room. Right now, there's a lot of buzz moving in the council chamber room. All the clan heads, along with the civilian representatives, were getting into their seats, while the shinobi elders, Hamura, Koharu, and Danzo, took their seats next to the Hokage. It was only after the council calmed down when the third came into the room. As he entered, everyone could see and feel the killing intent that he was letting off. Once he took his seat, the council members stayed silent for a bit. After a few moments, Hamura broke the silence and asked the third on why he called this meeting, since he wanted answers on why the third had called for an emergency meeting. Hamura, I'm more interested on why you, or matter of fact, you, Koharu, and Danzo have yet realized on what has happened, said the third. Hamura, Koharu, and Danzo were confused, since they were wondering on what has happened. It was then the third explained on what he meant. Early this morning, I went to check on a specific person, only to find out that he has been missing since yesterday afternoon, stated the third. The elder and clan heads were wondering on what he meant, but a few of the civilian council members knew since they started to act nervously, which the third saw and now knew who was responsible, or at least knows who were involved. Who do you mean, Sarutobi? Asked Koharu. I'm talking about Naruto Uzumaki. That's what I'm talking about. This got the heads and the elders a stunned look, which the third explained. I had just gotten a report from my Umbu after I checked on him early this morning. It appears that Naruto has been missing since yesterday afternoon, before a violent storm hit. The clan's heads and elders were upset now. The clan heads knows that Naruto isn't the Kyuubi, so they honor the wish of the fourth Hokage, but still didn't do much of anything nice, except the Hyuga or Yukiya, who rejected the boy and avoided him. The elders knew that with Naruto gone, Konoha has lost the Kyuubi no Yoko, which was an important military weapon for them. This was especially the case for Danzo, since he was hoping to turn the boy into his own personal weapon that would only listen to him. which had tried to get the third to hand him over to him for the past couple of years. It was then that Danzo spoke up. Impossible. For the week that you were gone, I had sent, much to my own request, a few extra shinobi to keep an eye on the boy. I find it impossible for him to be missing. The third looked at Danzo, who, even though they sometimes don't agree on things, they do know how important Naruto is. For the third, it was keeping the fourth Hokage legacy and heir of the Namikaze/Uzumaki clan safe, while Danzo saw Naruto as nothing more as his weapon. It appears that somehow the mob that my Umbu had told me about was able to strike on him, which they then threw him towards his death at the river that was closely located to our village. Answer the third. It was then Tsum, clan head of the Inazuka, spoke up. Then we need to search for the boy immediately. He may have survived the water and could still be alive, but barely. Yes, I know. Unfortunately, since yesterday's storm, the river was moving too rapidly for any young child to actually survive. And even if he did manage to stay afloat on the river, you must remember that there is a waterfall which would certainly end anyone's life, especially when he was beaten towards an inch of his life. Aster the third. Most of the clan heads, except the Ukiya, Aburame, and Hyuga, just lowered their heads since the Yondaime Hokage's legacy was now lost. The other three clans' head didn't show any emotion, but had their own thoughts about it. The civilians were secretly happy about since they don't have to worry about the demon infecting their home and village anymore. Their thoughts were broken when the third spoke up. Tsum, even though we know that Naruto not being alive is hard, I would at least like you or any of your clansmen to bring back his body if it can be found. Which Tsum nodded in agreement to the third request. With that, he ended the meeting, but assured that for those who were involved in Naruto's death would be punished in the highest degree. Once the clan heads, elders, and civilians left, the third just sighed in sadness cause of what happened. I should have at least told Naruto about his parents. At least then, he would have died knowing the truth and be at peace knowing that they really loved him. Thought the third, since now, he has to plan a funeral for Naruto and place his corpse or find something of him to secretly place him next to his parents, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki. In Kyomo. Once past the gates to enter the village, Darui and his team made it back home. As they walked, Darui ordered C to take the boy to the hospital and stay with him, while he told his other teammates to go home and rest since he wants to report the mission to the fourth Raikage himself. The reason on why he wants to discuss the mission himself was because he wanted to make sure that the boy they found was legit, and if so, the Raikage would have to think of something about it. Darui's team went to do like is said, which he then made his way to the Raikage's office. Darui walked towards the Raikage's office, which didn't take long. He made his way towards the Raikage's office, where he saw the Raikage's secretary. The secretary was a young female who looked to be in her early to mid-20s. She had white hair and dark skin, while dressed in a kuniochi dress that kind of looked like a bit of a business suit, where the skirt stopped just above her knees. Hey Mabui, Team Darui has returned from our B-rank mission and is ready to report. Also, I would like to inform the Raikage about a recent development that my team received while coming back home, said Darui. Very well, Darui-san. I will inform the Raikage about your return and about your mission report, as well as the development, answered Mabui. As Mabui went inside the Raikage's office, Darui waited outside his office. Man, this is such a drab. I finally was able to perfect my speech for the Raikage to hear my report. But now I have to explain to the Raikage about the possibility of us finding another Jinchuriki like Yujito and Bisama. I don't know what he would think. What a drab, thought Darui. Mabui came back after a few minutes, where she told Darui to come in. The Raikage's office was a spacious oval office, where on the opposite side of the double-door entrance, there was a large windows that showed all of Kumo. Between the windows and center of the office, the Raikage sits in a somewhat desk, where on one side had the regular desk version, while on the other connected to it, a sofa where 100-pound dumbbells or more laid near it. On the sofa, seating comfortably, was the Yondaime Raikage A. He was a tall 6 feet 5 inches or 7 foot man. He was a very muscular man, those from the Mr. Universe competitions, with blonde hair and dark skin. He wore shinobi pants, with gold bangle bracelets on each of his wrists and shinobi sandals as well. Finally, he wore his Raikage robe and hat. Once Darui came in, the Raikage spoke to him. "All right, Darui. Even though I can read your B-rank mission report on paper, you insisted on speaking with me since you said that your team found a development." "Hi, Zai-kai-sama. Before I speak about the development, I would like to explain the mission's success," said Darui. For next 10 minutes or more, don't know, Darui explained to the Raikage about what had happened on the mission, which the Raikage was pleased to hear. After he let the Raikage digest his mission report, he then began to explain on what his team has stumbled in their arms. "Raikage-sama, as we were ready to get some rest for the night in a cave, I was the last to go in when I decided to check the waterfall to check that water won't pour in the cave. It was then I saw a young boy fall from the top of the waterfall, which I immediately caught. Once I caught him, I saw that he had multiple injuries. I had C to check and help him out. After C finished with him, he showed me something interesting on the boy," said Darui. The Raikage was interested on learning on what Darui and C found out about the boy. Darui took a moment to breath some air before saying, "We both saw a seal on the boy's stomach. It looked to be a very powerful seal. My only assumption is that he is a Jinchuriki," finished Darui. Both A and Mabui, who was still inside the office, were completely surprised on what Darui. The Raikage immediately asked questions. "Darui, are you sure?" asked Raikage. "Yes. Alt hot, I'm not sure of it myself. That is why we brought him here and get your opinion, Raikage-sama," answered Darui. "Where did you say you found the boy?" asked A. Darui asked for a map of the terrain west near the border of Hainokuni. Darui pointed on the map where the waterfall was located, which both Raikage and Mabui looked at. It was then Mabui spoke up. "Raikage-sama, that waterfall is connected to a river that moves from east to west. Judging from the river to the west, I say it was near Konoha." With that, a thought about it, which he concluded, "I believe that you, Darui, have found Konoha's Kyubi no Jinchuriki," which surprised Darui. I then asked where the boy is now, which Darui told him that he left him in C's care to take to the hospital and not to leave him alone until he got word from him. I told Mabui that he is leaving the office and she would take care of things here, since he wants to see the boy cause he got a suspicions feeling that he knows who the boy is. If he guessed right, then Kumo had just received the jackpot in possible glory and power. Kumo's hospital. Currently, C was sitting inside a hospital room, waiting for Darui or Raikage's word on him to let him go and rest. As he sat, he looked at the boy on the bed he was seating next to. He was amazed on how fast the boy's healing ability are, but reminded himself that if he is a Jinchuriki, then it wouldn't be unusual for Jinchurikis getting a special power from their Biju. Naruto was resting peacefully in a hospital bed. As he rested, he had no idea what has happened to him. C waited for a couple of more minutes when he heard knocking at the door. He went and opened the door to see Darui with the Raikage. He bowed to the Raikage, which he led them inside the room. I quickly went to the boy's bedside to see his face clearly. It was then that he smiled since he guessed the possibility that he was right. "Well, Darui, it seems that you have indeed brought home something interesting. And if I do things right with the boy, unlike what Konoha has done, then we'll have a very powerful shinobi in the making in our ranks," said A. Both Darui and C were wondering on what the Raikage was planning, but stopped their thoughts when he spoke to again. "C, inform the medic Neens here to alert me when the boy wakes up. Also, once he wakes up, give something to eat, since even I can tell that the boy hasn't eaten anything good for a while. After that, you may go and get some rest from your mission. Order A." "Hi, Raikage-ma," answered C, which he then left the room to inform the medical units. I then turned to Darui and said, "Now, Darui, since you brought him here, I'll have to give in your team a bonus for this," which Darui smiled. "Now go and get some rest, but before you do rest, I want you to inform B and Yujito to visit my office later on in the afternoon." Ordered A. Darui nodded in agreement and left, which he was the last to leave. Before he left the room, he looked at the blonde-haired boy, while thinking, even though I could just get the Kyuubi out of him. It is better if he becomes loyal to us, since Konoha has thrown away a prize like no other. I will not let this opportunity pass us by. Plus, I would at least show some respect to my only rival son. After all, he is the only one that surpassed me in speed. A thought about the only person to actually surpass him in speed, the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, days later. It was mid-morning, and currently, the third Hokage was walking towards the cemetery with some flowers in his hands. These were beautiful flowers, a couple of white lilies to take where all people are resting in peace, Konoha's graveyard. Once he walked inside the graveyard, he peacefully walked toward 3 specific graves that were close together. In front of him, the 3 graves were significant since these 3 are a family in both blood and now spirit. On his left side, it was Konoha's strongest Hokage and hero in the Third Great Shinobi War, Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage. Next to it, it was an unmarked grave, which he mentally noted that it needed to be marked later on. The grave had no name, since it was a person that no one knew much except for her good friends. The grave had only the Uzumaki symbol. The third knew that this grave was Kushina Uzumaki, Naruto's mother and the 4th Hokage's secret wife. Next to these graves was their greatest treasure, the treasure that they sacrifice everything including their own lives, their only son, Naruto Uzumaki. The only thing is that it was unmarked except with the Uzumaki symbol, since he wanted no one to desecrate it cause of their past grudge against the Kyuubi. He wanted Naruto's grave to be at peace, since he wanted these 3 people to be at peace together as a family here in death and at the afterlife. The third placed the white lily flowers on each one of their graves, so they know that they will never be forgotten by those that care about them. As he places the flowers, he could only wish that Naruto's body was here, except it wasn't. After a few days of searching, Tsumi's tracking team followed the river to try and find Naruto, but there wasn't any sign of him. Once he had gotten the report, the third decided to just bury the things that were of him, so at least they know that his spirit was at peace. Once he finished his prayers, he left to go back to the Hokage Tower, since unlike the dead, he still needed to do his work for the village. As the third made it to the tower, he steadily walked toward his office. As he climbed up the tower, he figured that now would be the time to send word to Jiraiya about Naruto, since Jiraiya was the only other person close to Naruto and his family. Once he made it to his office, he opened the door to find the elders inside his office, waiting for him. "Sarutobi, where were you? Usually at this time, you would be here," stated Koharu. "I went and paid my respects to my predecessor and his family." "Got a problem with that?" answered the third. Koharu didn't speak about since it was true. The elders knew that with Naruto's death, the last known heir to both the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans was now gone from Konoha. "Sarutobi, even though respecting the 4th Hokage and his long-lost family is well and all, we must think about the village. More importantly, the village's military power," stated Danzo. Sarutobi listened as Hamura, Koharu, and Danzo explained about how their village's strength has just taken a blow with losing their Jinchuriki, as well as losing the heir of the Namikaze and Uzumaki. It was then that he heard Danzo had a plan to help the village get back its lost strength, which Sarutobi frowned as he listened to Danzo explain where he can get a new Jinchuriki. Days earlier, it was early evening in Kyumo, which a lot of families were getting ready to enjoy dinner, while shinobis prepare to go on mission or whatever. For the Raikage, he was getting ready to talk with the village's strongest guardians, his adopted brother B, the Hachibi no Kyugyu, and 16-year-old Yujito, Ni, the Nibi no Bakaniko. As they waited, he couldn't help but think on how he would get the boy to join Kyumo. But hearing and seeing his condition, he knew that if he pushed the right buttons at him, then Naruto would want to stay here and train to be a powerful shinobi for them. His thoughts were interrupted when his secretary came into his office to inform her that B and Yujito were here. Once they both enter, B was the first to talk. "Yo, bro, what's up? So what's the beef? Rap Killer B." "Okay, just to give you all fair warning, I suck at rhyming, so." I'll try to make him rhyme. But if Killer Bee talks like a normal person, don't be discouraged. Aside at his brother's lame attempt to rap or rhyme, while Yujito just frowned in annoyance, but continued to act maturely in front of the Raikage. It took a moment, which both Bee and Yujito straighten up since they know the look on their leader's face meant something serious has happened. Darui has returned from his mission earlier today, as you all know. Both nodded, which then continued. But on the way back, Darui and his team had stumbled upon something that virtually landed in their arms. Darui's has brought the Kyubi Jinchuriki from Konoha to Kumo today. As soon as they stated the fact, both Bee and Yujito were surprised to hear that Darui had somehow brought to Kumo another Jinchuriki and the most powerful of Biju along with it. I began to explain to both of them on what happened to the boy once Darui had found him. He explained the wounds, the injuries, everything. For Yujito, it saddened her since a young boy being in such a beaten state was very hard to imagine. But for Bee, he knows it too well since, unlike Yugdio, he knew what it meant to be a true Jinchuriki since he was given almost the same treat if his brother wasn't there to help him out. Their thoughts were interrupted when they continued. Currently, the boy is in the hospital, being cared for, but considering on how fast he is healing, I say he might wake up completely healthy tomorrow. So why have you contacted us then, Raikage-sama? Asked Yujito. I plan to see if the boy would join Kumo, but given the state he was in, he'll most likely join since I doubt that he would want to go back to Konoha after what he received. Plus, if I'm right, then Kumo would have the heir of two powerful clans. Answered a. Yujito didn't know on what he meant about the heir of two powerful clans, but she had to agree that the boy would most likely join their village since here, he can get a fresh start and become a normal boy. So bro, what's up with us because I don't see why you asked us here for? Asked B. If I play my cards right, he would want to stay, at which point I will explain to him on who he is to make sure that he knows. After that, I play it by ear. What I want you two to do is be his guidance, since if he meets others like him, the likelihood of wanting to stay here would increase since he would probably see you two as role models. Stated a. Both B and Yujito nodded, since what they said was pretty much a good plan. Yujito, even though doesn't have it as bad as B did when she was young, she can understand that the fact of being alone as a Jinchuriki. If it wasn't for B being her a role model and teacher, she would have never had the courage to continue to move forward and become the kunoichi she was meant to be. B thought the idea was alright, but still didn't like the idea because he felt that he may be babysitting a 5-year-old. Now, with that explained, A said, breaking the thought that B and Yujito were having, you two are dismissed since now. All we need to do is wait for the kid to wake up. Both B and Yujito left to go home and sleep, while he was also thinking the same thing, but also wondered on how things would turn out. He can only hope that his plan can work. Morning. The sun was high mid-morning, which stores, vendors, shinobi, and such a Kumo were getting up for another day. In Kumo's hospital, a young Naruto was starting to wake from his ordeal. As Naruto was starting to wake up, he could feel that he was sleeping in a soft bed. As he rubbed his eyes, he suddenly remembered on what happened to him. The beating, the injuries, the rushing water. He looked at himself, wondering on how he could still be alive. He then looked at his surroundings to see that he was inside a hospital room, but he could tell that it was different somehow. He then heard the wind from the window. He didn't hear any of the trees that were always near the hospital. He knew something must be wrong, but before he could do anything, the door to his room opened. He looked to see a young nurse. "Oh, so you're awake? I'm glad since you had everyone worried here." The nurse smiled, which Naruto can tell that it was real since only the old man, third Hokage, Tuchi, and I am ever smile like that to him. His thoughts were interrupted when his stomach growled loudly, which the nurse smiled and laughed a bit. "I can hear that you must be very hungry. Wait right here, and I'll go get you something to eat, okay?" said the nurse, which Naruto nodded in agreement. Naruto decided to wait after he got something to eat to move around since he was just too hungry to do anything. As Naruto waited in bed, the nurse quickly went to the nearest medic to inform the Raikage that he was awake. After informing the Raikage, The nurse quickly went to get something good for Naruto to eat, since she can tell that Naruto hasn't anything proper for a long time now. Naruto waited to see that the nurse came back with a healthy selection for Naruto's breakfast. The nurse brought Naruto a bowl of mixed fruits, apples, bananas, strawberry, a bowl of cereal and milk, a couple of butter toast with jam, and orange juice. At first, Naruto was a bit hesitant, but the nurse nudges him to eat, while she goes and gets something for him to wear. Once the nurse left, Naruto started to eat the food that she brought. The food was, but to him who hasn't eaten anything so tasty or fresh besides Ichiraka ramen, it was a 4-course meal. He began to eat the meal, which he ate it in less than 10 minutes, since it was the first meal that he has gotten in a long time. Once he was finished, he never felt so good since Ichiraka ramen. But now with finishing the meal, he starts to wonder on what to do next since he is in an unknown place. Just as he was thinking it, someone else walked into the room. It was Darui and C, who came as order from the Raikage. Naruto was a little nervous, since he saw that the headbands weren't Konoha leaf symbols, meaning they were from another village. Before Naruto could begin to worry, they both spoke to him. "Hey kid, how are you feeling?" "Better, I hope, especially when I caught you before you hit the rocks on the waterfall," stated Darui. Naruto was stunned since he didn't know that he was going to fall into a waterfall. He figured that he must have been so out of it that he doesn't remember anything else. Naruto's thoughts were interrupted when C spoke up. "You really gave us a scare, kid, especially since you were in death's door when we found you." It was then that Naruto spoke up. Thank you then for saving my life." Both Darui and C took Naruto's thank you, since even though they could have left him there, they were both kind-hearted and would do that to a kid, especially one so badly hurt. Both Darui and C thoughts were interrupted when Naruto spoke up. So where am I?" asked Naruto. "You are in Kumo. Now we should ask you a question. What's your name and where you're from?" asked Darui. "Uzumaki. Naruto Uzumaki from Konoha." Answer Naruto. "All right. Now, although we know your name, we'll introduce you to the Raikage, who is the same as the Hokage in our village later on," said C. Naruto was surprised to hear that he's going to be introducing to someone who is just as important as the old man, who he usually calls the Hokage. Darui then said that he would be introduced to him later, once he has gotten a little stronger. Once they both left, Naruto couldn't help but be happy since this the first time anyone has looked at him, beside the third, Tsuchi the ramen chief, without glaring or giving him the cold look in their eyes. Next day. It's been a whole day since Naruto had talked to Darui and C. During that time, Naruto was thinking about what was going to happen to him. He also thought about how worried the third is, as well as and Tsuchi. Also at that time, he saw a couple of other nurses checking up on him, making sure that he was all right. Naruto had to be honest with himself, thinking on how nice these people are since he didn't see or wasn't given any hostility towards him. Not only were the nurses nice to him, he also got a nice couple of meals, which he couldn't be happier. For lunch, he had fruit, apple and orange slices, peanut butter sandwich, and milk. For dinner, he got rice and curry with water. All in all, Naruto was able to have a stuffed stomach, which for the first time ever, he had actually gotten to eat so much in one day. After he got the meals and rest some more, he felt like a new person. The next morning, Darui and C came back and told him that he was going to see the Raikage later today. Naruto was kind of scared since he doesn't know what kind of person a Raikage is. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but wish that the third Hokage was with him for support. Soon after, Darui and C left to give Naruto some more privacy since he was given some new clothes to wear. Once Naruto had changed his hospital gown to his new clothing, shirt, shorts, and shinobi sandals, he walked outside his hospital room to see Darui and C waiting for him. Both of them told Naruto to follow them since they didn't want him to get lost. Outside, Naruto got to see where and what kind of village he was in. He was surprised to see this. All around him, Naruto saw nothing but mountain ranges which he saw housing and other building-like structures built into them. Naruto continued to follow Darui and C, which Darui walked in front. Whilst he walked behind them, he saw all the people walking around, which he noted that their skin was darker than what he normally saw people. He also noted that there wasn't many tree around the village. For a couple of minutes, the three finally made it to Raikage Tower, which Naruto saw that it was built inside the tallest mountain. Once they went inside, Naruto was amazed on how it was built. He saw many shinobi and other personnel walking around the building, actively busy. Darui led Naruto to the stairs where all three walked up to the top floor, where the Raikage's office was located. Outside the office, the Raikage personal secretary was filing some documents when she saw Darui and C coming up the stairs with a young boy with whisker marks on both his cheeks. She realized that it was Naruto, the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko. Darui told Mabui that they were here to see the Raikage, which she went to announce their arrival to him. Naruto was now looking nervous since he was wondering on what the Raikage would be like. He had many thoughts running through his mind, but hoped that the Raikage was like the third Hokage. Naruto's thoughts stopped when Mabui said that they were allowed to enter, which they all went in. Naruto tried not to look nervous, but he couldn't help but be a little intimidated by this moment. Once inside, Naruto looked around to see that the office was circular and had open windows that could see around the village behind it. His attention was quickly focused as he saw what probably the biggest, muscular person he has ever seen. In front of him was a tall, from what he can tell as the Raikage was sitting down, dark-skinned man with a large, muscular body. He had blonde hair that was combed back and a small mustache and beard. His face was distinguished with pronounced cheekbones and tear troughs under his eye and a prominent crease across his forehead. He wore the traditional robes and hat of a Kage, but with no shirt on to display his hulky body. He had gold bangle bracelets on each wrist and wore a gold belt around his waist with a boar's face engraved in the center. As Naruto was taking it all in, the Raikage was also looking at Naruto too. Even though Naruto was young, the Raikage saw the similarities to Konoha no Kiriryou Senko, Konoha's yellow flash, the Yondaime Hokage, mostly of the blonde spiky hair, blue eyes, and skin color. But of course, he also saw the similarities of his mother, the former Jinchuriki of Kyuubi, Kushina Uzumaki. When I heard that the boy's name was Naruto Uzumaki, he was able to figure out that he was Kushina's son, but now seeing him in front of him, he knew that the Minato and Kushina had gotten married. Once they met, the Raikage decided to break the ice and play by ear since he doesn't know how much Naruto knows of his past. "Hello, young one," said politely. Naruto also greeted the Raikage with respect since he knew that unlike the old man, the way the Raikage hold himself, he knew that he needs to be at his best behavior here. Once they greeted each other, it continues to speak. "You gave my men quite the scare, especially in the condition that they found you. I hope you thank them for saving your life." Seda. Naruto nodded in agreement, saying that he did thank both Darui and C. It was then that the Raikage decided to ask Naruto a question. "Even though I know that they saved you from death, I can't help but wonder something," which got Naruto attention. "Why were you inside a raging river in the first place?" Asta. Naruto, of course, knew why he was in the river, but he just doesn't know why the villagers hated him so much and give him beatings. The Raikage asked Naruto on why he was in it, which he told him since it would be bad if he lied to the Raikage. After Naruto finished explaining, the Raikage only had a serious look, while Darui and C had a painful look on their face on what Naruto's been through. The Reiki waited for a bit for the tension that Naruto was going through, as he could see in Naruto's face the look of fear and loneliness. It was then that the Raikage broke the silence. "Do you want to know why the people in your village despise you?" Naruto's eyes widened when he heard that the Raikage knows on why the villagers hate him so much. "I'm pretty sure that the old monkey, the third Hokage, has told you about the Kyuubi attacking Konoha." Naruto nodded as he remembered on what the old man told him before. He remembered that 5 years ago, that the Kyuubi came to Konoha and started to destroy everything in its path. Many shinobi and civilians were killed in the process, but it wasn't until the legendary Yondaime Hokage had killed the fox, but it cost him his life in the process. It was then that the Raikage began to fill Naruto with some facts. Now look here, kid. The Kyuubi can't not be killed. In fact, none of the Bijus can't be killed, stated the Raikage, which Naruto was beginning to wonder on what is a Biju, but stopped as the Raikage continued. Instead of killing it, the fourth could only seal it away so it couldn't destroy all of Konoha. He sealed it inside a little baby. Naruto never heard of this, but he wondered if it was true, then why he doesn't know about it. Plus, what has this story had to do with him? It was then that Naruto heard the Raikage give him some other facts. Listen, Naruto, when did the Kyuubi attack? Question Raikage. October 10th, answer Naruto. What day were you born? The Raikage asked again. October 10th, answer Naruto. Do you see where I'm going? If the Kyuubi attack on the same day you're born, and the fourth could only seal away into a young baby, what do you think happened? Question Raikage. It was then that Naruto began to see the gaps of what he was being told. He can start seeing things more thoroughly, all the beatings, especially the harsh treatment on his birthday, on why everyone calls him Demon. Just before he can say it, he heard the Raikage speak up. That's right, the fourth sealed the Kyuubi into you. You are the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko, stated the Raikage. Naruto just had a look of shock and fear since he doesn't know on what to think. Instinct quickly took over, which he first just slowly back away, then just started to run away, like he needed to get away from everyone. Darui, C, and Mabui were about to stop him, but he told them stop. I carefully looked at Naruto expressions before he ran away. Once Naruto ran away, Darui, C, and Mabui looked at the Raikage on why he let Naruto go. Let the boy go for now. He has just been told something that opened his eyes and realized on what he's been lied to, especially one that was never explained to. Let it be alone for now. I already have our Umbu watching the boy, so he doesn't go anywhere we don't want him to go or to get in trouble. Explained. The others could understand, since for a small child, news this big and heavy must be hard to endure, especially when everyone else knew and you didn't. With Naruto ran outside the Raikage mountain, trying to go anywhere to be alone. He ran for about half an hour until he made it to a secluded spot. In that half hour, Naruto ran towards the other half of the village in Kyomo, not even noticing it himself. The Umbu that were keeping an eye on him were amazed on how an ordinary child was able to run so far in such a short of time. But to their surprise, Naruto ran towards an area where Killer Bee sometimes hangs around. Naruto ran towards an open lake that had a lot of grass terrain, with a few bushes and trees around the area. Naruto just stopped at the edge of the lake, which he then fell on his knees from exhaustion. As he rested and got his breath to catch up to him, he looked at the lake, where the water's reflections showed his face. He looked at the water, which then remembered what all the people of Konoha said about it. "Get away, you demon," said one person. "Don't go near him. It's the demon," whispered another. "Hey, it's the freak," another yelled out. Naruto looked at the reflection to see himself, but then from all the comments that Konoha said, he then saw the reflection of Kyuubi as himself. He thought with tears coming out of his eyes, "Is this why everyone in Konoha hate me? Is this why they always beat me? Am I really the Kai?" Naruto's thoughts were interrupted when he heard someone say, "Hey, Squirt, what's with all the huffing and trembling?" Naruto looked behind him, away from the water's reflection, while also rubbing the tears of his face, to see a huge person behind him. It was a dark-skinned man with a muscular body, similar to the Raikage. He had a white beard and hair. He had a tattoo on his right shoulder that says Iron, and on his left cheek had a tattoo of a bull's horn. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white-colored forehead protector. He also wore a white-colored one-strap-over-one shoulder flak jacket of a jonin with a red rope tied around his waist, white handbands, and a white scarf around his neck, and carried 7 swords on his back. Before Naruto could say anything, the older man looked at him for a moment before saying, "Oh, so you're the kid who has the 9-0? Huh," Naruto said in confusion. "I said you have 9-0, the Kyuubi no Yoko," stated the older man. "H, how do you know?" Surprised Naruto, since he didn't know if everyone in Kumo knows this or not that he is the QB. "'Cause like you, I have one as well," said the older man. "You have one as well," surprised Naruto. "Let me introduce meself. I float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I Killer Bee, the eight-tailed beast, word," rapped Killer Bee. Killer Bee was actually surprised when he saw Naruto, since the Hachibi told him when he saw him that he is the Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. In honesty, Killer Bee didn't want to see Naruto yet, since he figured he'd be put as a babysitter, and decided to leave that task to Yujito, since she was also the Jinchuriki of Nibi. "You're what?" asked Naruto. "I'm Killer Bee, and like you I hold one as well. Old 8-0, said Killer Bee. "How do you know I have the QB?" asked Naruto. "'Cause 8-0 said you have 9-0, answered Killer Bee. "Are you saying that you are the 8 tails, like I'm a 9, said Naruto. Killer Bee then just scoffed when Naruto said that, which he replied, "No, I'm Killer Bee. 8-0 is my partner, like you and 9-0 is 9-0. Naruto was confused since he didn't get what Killer Bee was saying, since he, educationally speaking, Naruto was barely taught any reading, writing, and math skills, so he barely understands anything complex like what he was being told. Killer Bee could see the confusion, which he started to explain that he and Naruto were, in simple terms for Naruto to understand, just the jails that hold the jailers. It took Naruto a bit of time to understand that Kyuubi was Kyuubi and he was himself. Killer Bee can see that Naruto was now better, since he saw Naruto look at his reflection on the water before splashing the image away to see the water calm down again to see his reflection again. Killer Bee guessed that Naruto first imagined himself before breaking the image to see his own reflection. Naruto thanked Killer Bee on telling him this, since he barely understood on what was going on with himself. After all, Naruto is just 5 years old, who is supposed to start learning how to read and write, not know complicated stuff like this. After a while of looking over the lake, Naruto asked Killer Bee on some things, like how can he be so cheerful when he has a Biju inside him? Or how can he be so strong knowing this? Naturally, Killer Bee said it in a rap tone, but Naruto was able to understand some of it, which he found out that his brother, the Raikage, had faith in him along with some of his friends. Naruto was envious of him since Killer Bee has friends, which he explained why. For Naruto, the only people that ever showed him kindness was the third Hokage, Ayumi, and Tsuchi of the ramen stand, while the third was the only one to have faith in him. All the other children just stayed away from him because he heard their parents telling them to. Killer Bee can understand that, since when he became a Jinchuriki for the Hachibi, he had the same thing, except not as severe as Naruto, since he, even though he was left all alone some of the time, no one has ever given him a beating or the stuff that Naruto went through. As they talked, Naruto actually felt better since he had someone who actually understands on what he went through. After a while, Killer Bee suggested that they go to his brother, since he was pretty sure that he still wants to talk to Naruto, which he nodded, Kumo. Naruto was walking with Killer Bee towards the Raikage's office, which for the first time, he was actually looking at Kumo. He saw the civilians and ninja that were walking around. The civilians smiled nicely at him, while the shinobi looked at Killer Bee with respect and admiration. As he looked at everyone that was looking at Killer Bee, he remembered that was he wished for, to earn everyone's respect and not look down on him. It was then that he remembered that he wanted to be Hokage. Naruto stopped thinking when Killer Bee said to him that they were here. Naruto returned back to the Raikage Mountain, where the Raikage's office was located at the top. It took a bit until Killer Bee led Naruto back to the top of the mountain. Once they reached the top, Naruto was once again greeted by Mabui, who was surprised to see Killer Bee with him. Killer Bee told Mabui that he brought him back here so the Raikage can figure out on what to do with Naruto. Killer Bee said his goodbye to Naruto, as he had his own thing to do. Naruto then followed Mabui, who took inside the Raikage's office. The Raikage was doing some paperwork when Mabui came inside with Naruto with her. I was wondering when Naruto came back, which Mabui walked next to him and told him that Killer Bee brought him back. The Raikage nodded in understanding, since he figured that Bee must have done something since he can see that Naruto has somewhat come to terms about himself. Once Mabui finished explaining to the Raikage, She took her leave, which left Naruto and the Raikage alone. It seemed now that you have somewhat comes to terms on finding out that you have the QB sealed inside you, stated the Raikage, which Naruto nodded in agreement. So, what do you plan to do now? Asked I don't know. After finding out about the QB, I just don't know. I could always go back to Konoha. A mentally frowned when he heard that, but decided to wait on what Naruto said next to see what his chooses first. But thinking about going back to Konoha makes me remember all the times the people were happy to see me get hurt, or plainly look at me in disgust. The truth is, if it wasn't for the old man, or I am in Tucci there, I won't want to be there. Finished Naruto. I nodded, since this was going good for him, whom his thoughts stopped when Naruto continued. Those three are the only people that look at me as a person, while everyone else thinks of me as just a monster, nothing more. But even so, I don't know where else to go since Konoha has been my home for all my life. Well, if you want, you can always stay here in Kyumo, since you don't feel like going back to Konoha, said A, which surprised Naruto on being given a chance for a fresh start in a new village. If you decided to stay, you can live here in Kyumo, and if you wish to become a shinobi for Kyumo, I will allow you to join. How does that sound? A asked Naruto. Naruto was thrilled since not only does he get the chance to start out new in Kyumo, if he wanted to, he can also become a shinobi as well. But of course, Naruto thought about the third Hokage, Ayam and Tucci, and how sad they must be. But he remembered them saying that they wished he had a better life than the one he is now. With this, he can. Naruto looked at the Raikage before saying, yes, I like to stay here. Answering a question. I was pleased since he saw Naruto having a few moments of thinking it over, but was pleased with the results. Now, it has decided to let him be by himself for now, and if Naruto decided to become shinobi, he knows just the type of motivation that he knows that would get Naruto to become a strong shinobi, as well as seeing how strong the legacy that he carries really is. With that, it had Mabui come back to his office, where he instructed her to get things ready for Kyumo's newest citizen, which she nodded in agreement. With that, the Raikage told Naruto to go around Kyumo to see what they have, and would get him when everything was ready. Naruto nodded, which he then left to go exploring around the village. With Naruto walked outside the Raikage mountain and left to go exploring. As he walked around, he looked at how the village was so active with life. He saw men and women shopping, talking, and enjoying themselves, along with children playing around. Naruto continued his little journey until he found a nice park. He walked inside to see that it was just as nice as Konoha, with the exception that it had a few more boulders around the area. He continued to walk around until he heard some children playing around. He was going to try and join them, but decided to wait since he doesn't want to make a bad impression. He decided to go to a nearby tree and lay next to it where he was easily visible to any of them. He waited for a while, which he watched the clouds passing by gently with the wind. Along with wait, he also thought if he can finally be able to make friends, earn respect, be someone and not just being called demon, since he remembered all the days of hardship he had to endure. In fact, even at night, he can barely sleep since he hardly had a good night's sleep, along with the added fact that sometimes someone would come and try to hurt him while he was asleep. With the day going through, Naruto couldn't help but find peace in the environment, where he just took a nap. Later, it was mid-afternoon when Naruto woke up from his nap, which he was woken up by someone. He looked around to see no one around him. He wondered on who it was, but then heard the voice again. You know, it's cool for you to take a nap, but it's uncool to be sleeping outside where somebody can play tricks on you like that, said a girl voice. Naruto looked behind the tree that he had slept next to see a blonde-haired girl sitting behind the tree that he was next to. He walked around to get a better view of the girl. He turned to see a cute girl with pale skin and long blonde hair that reached the middle of her back that looked to be the same age as him. She had blue eyes, but darker color. The thing that caught his attention of the girl was that she had this cool, emotionless look on her face. The girl was also taking a closer look at Naruto as he was looking at her as well. As she was looking at the Naruto noticed that the girl was holding a book with her. Both of them were looking at each for a few moments, until Naruto decided to break the ice. Thanks for giving me the advice. I guess that I just got peaceful at looking at the clouds that I checked out, said Naruto. It's cool. Besides, the little bit of snoring was kind of bothering me, stated the girl. Oh, really? Well, sorry about that. What's your name? Asked Naruto. The girl looked at Naruto before saying, My name is Samui, and would you be cool enough to say your name? Hi, Samui-chan. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, greeted Naruto. Samui acknowledged Naruto's greeting, even with the chan that Naruto added to her name, before going back to her book. Just as she was going to read her book, Naruto spoke to her again. What kind of book you were reading? Samui just sighed as she regretted now on sitting the spot where Naruto was located. Samui looked at Naruto and told him that it was a simple children's book of Kyumo that she got from the library and that she was reading about it so she can improve herself. To be honest, Samui wanted a Kyumo history book, but the librarian wouldn't allow her since she was still too young. Naruto asked her if she can read the book out loud because some of the stories that the third had told him before. I'm not going to tell you. If you were cool enough, how about you go and ask your parents since they can teach how to read? Answered Samui. I don't have any parents. I'm an orphan, you see, stated Naruto. Then why aren't you in Kyumo's orphanage since that's where orphans live? Asked Samui. It's because I just came to your village just a couple of days ago. I don't know much since this is the first time I got to see the village since I was stuck in a hospital. Answered Naruto. I see. If you want to know about Kyumo or read children's books like this, then I suggest that it would be a cool idea to go to the library since you can read about Kyumo from there. Stated Samui. I don't know how to read. I was never taught much on how to read or write, so I was hoping if you can tell me since I can't. Embarrassed Naruto. Samui looked at Naruto, as she can see that Naruto wasn't lying. She said that it was all right, which she would read out loud to him while he listened. Naruto quickly sit next to Samui, while making sure that she had her own personal space so he doesn't annoy her. For the first time, Naruto felt like he made a friend of sorts, which he smiled as he listened to Samui read out loud from the book. Late afternoon. The sun was just starting to set when Darui and C went looking for Naruto. The reason they were looking for Naruto was because the Raikage asked them to bring him to him, as well as since they were the only one of few people that knows what Naruto looks like. Both Darui and C looked for a while until they found Naruto at one of the parks. They spotted Naruto sitting next to a blonde-haired girl. For what they can tell, they can see that Naruto was listening to what the girl was saying from the book. They made their way towards Naruto, which both Naruto and Samui looked up to, see the two shinobi in front of them. Samui was surprised to see two shinobi in front of her, which she was even more surprised to hear what they said. Naruto-san, the Raikage has requested that you meet him now. He says he wants to talk to you about something, said Darui. Naruto nodded and said his goodbye to Samui and said that he hopes to see her again. Raikage's office. Naruto had returned to the Raikage's office, which the Raikage was waiting for him. Once the Raikage explained to Naruto that he got Naruto an apartment that was located at the middle of the village, where it was easily accessible to reach either the civilian school or Shinobi Academy or the Raikage Mountain, as well as saying that. Naruto was very thankful, especially since the Raikage said that he has given Naruto a small allowance for him to use to buy food and things he needed to survive. Naruto was also pleased to hear that the Raikage enrolled him into the civilian school so that he can learn how to read, write, and other things, while if Naruto wanted to join the Shinobi Academy, then he would have to wait until he is 7 or 8 years old to join. Now, Naruto, as you know, I already told you that you have the QB sealed inside you, which Naruto nodded. With that, I'll be going to tell you that I'm going to tell the rest of my shinobi about it, stated the Raikage. Naruto started to get worried, but then calmed down when the Raikage continued to explain, Don't worry, I'll be going to tell them that I only tell current shinobi in Kyumo, but never to any civilians. If anyone has the right to tell them, it should be you since it is your secret. Understand? Naruto nodded in agreement, as well as being relieved to know that his secret remains a secret. With that, it excused Naruto to go check out his new apartment and to be ready to begin his new life in Kyumo, Konoha. Currently, It was a bright and sunny day for everyone. The citizens were busy smiling and living out their lives in peace, while the shinobi continued to train and grow strong in order to protect their home. For the third Hokage, it was a day for him to continue to get ready for the upcoming event for Konoha, the Genin graduation exam. The Hokage was looking over the soon-to-be Genin graduates. One of them was the last and heir of Uchiha clan, Sasuke Uchiha. As he thought about Sasuke, he couldn't help but think about Naruto, since if it wasn't for the civilians as well as the irresponsibility of some of his shinobi, Naruto would have become a shinobi for Konoha as well. As he thought about Naruto, he couldn't help on what happened over the past 8 years. With Naruto's death, the third remembered how happy the villagers were to know that the demon is dead. Of course, he punished the Umbu that was supposed to have protected Naruto, while he also heard Danzo also discipline his root agent that was also had to keep an eye on him as well. After Naruto's death, the next thing to happen was Kumo's peace agreement, which went well without a hitch. With the peace treaty, Konoha didn't have to worry much about Kumo, which he and the elders had to wonder on since making the arrangement was a simple thing, which Kumo made the agreements even for both Konoha and themselves. The final thing to happen was the Uchiha clan massacre, which Sasuke's older brother, Itachi Uchiha, killed every last member, from his father, mother to his cousins. Everyone in the Uchiha clan was killed except his little brother, Sasuke. With the Uchiha clan lost, the civilians thought that Sasuke could resurrect the Uchiha clan to glory and treated him special since he was in Uchiha. With that, the third looked at the portfolio on the final genin that could be graduating this year. The potential genin's name was Ko, and he was the Jinchuriki of the Sanbai. Sarutobi remembered the conversation that he had with the elders, which all three of them agreed that they needed to get another Jinchuriki since they lost Naruto. Sarutobi remembered that day pretty well. Flashback. The third had walked into his office where he was greeted by the shinobi elders. They asked where he was, which he told them that he went to pay a visit to the fourth Hokage and his family grave. After explaining, the elders talked to Hiruzen about the loss of military might, the Kyuubi. They discussed the issue for a bit, which Danzo told the third that he had a plan to have another Biju in Konoha. The third was against it, but the other two elders, Hamura and Koharu, wanted to know what Danzo planned. Now, as you all know, Kiri is under civil war from the bloodline purging, right? Said Danzo, which they nodded. During that time, I overheard of a rumor which I sent a few shinobi to investigate the matter, which was verified. The Yonde Mizukage was killed, but not before he released the Sanbai free from his seal, right before he was killed. As of now, Kiri's civil war is almost over, but before then, we can send a team of elite sealers to capture the Sanbai and seal it inside another child. Finished Danzo. Hamura and Koharu were somewhat pleased about the idea, but Sarutobi was having mixed feelings since capture the Sanbai could cause them to lose a lot of manpower, which Konoha was still recovering from. But the elders agreed with the idea and continued to work on the third until he agreed, which he did. Of course, for safety and secrecy, the third said that no one besides the people who are going to do this operation would know of it since the third doesn't want to repeat like with Naruto, which the elders agreed on it. In flashback, it took about a month to complete the mission, which some of the third skilled Umbu sealers, as well as some of Danzo's own men, to find and capture the Sanbai in secret. Of course, this cost some of their men lives since capturing the Sanbai was dangerous. With the Sanbai in Konoha's position now, Danzo had picked a boy from his root organization that he trained. The boy's name was Ko, who had average skills and determination, but still a perfect candidate for containing the Sanbai since he had a strong chakra network. Once the Sanbai was sealed, Danzo had the boy trained in his root program to control the Biju within him. But of course, Sarutobi knew that Danzo wanted to control the boy for his own use, just like he hoped he could do with Naruto. But he stopped Danzo by putting the boy in a shinobi academy, making sure that he can live a normal life since he wanted to make sure that Danzo doesn't corrupt him any more than he did. As he thought about Ko, he remembered on what happened when he explained to Jiraiya about Naruto's death. When he told Jiraiya about Naruto, he was completely saddened and went into despair. He knew that Jiraiya had planned to train the boy once he became a genin, like he did with Naruto's father, the Yondaime Hokage. It went on for months until Jiraiya got himself back to normal. But still the third can see that Jiraiya was now carrying an even heavier amount of guilt and regret for failing his former student and friend, along with failing Naruto as his godfather. Sarutobi's thoughts were interrupted when someone entered his door. He saw Hamura and Koharu walking into his office, which they came to talk about the upcoming Genin exams, which they wondered on which possible children would be teamed up together. He went to discuss the matter with them. While unknown to him, or anyone for that matter, the soul that was thought to be dead was also preparing for his own Genin exam. In Kyomo, like Konoha, everyone was busy with what they were doing. The civilians were working hard and happily for their families, while the shinobi continue to train hard when they are needed to protect their village. For one villager, it was an important day for him. He was young, upcoming Genin, who has gotten a lot of attention around Kyomo, one who is golden for Rookie of the Year in Kyomo. He was easily recognized since he had blonde, spiky hair, blue cerulean eyes, but the thing that got people to notice him was his whisker marks on both his cheeks with a serious look on his face. He was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the future Go-Dame Raikage of Kyomo. The reason he has a serious face, beside his usual friendly smiling one, was because he won the deal he made with the Raikage when he first wanted to become a shinobi. Flashback. A 7-year-old Naruto was currently inside the Raikage's office, asking that he wants to become a shinobi for Kyomo. I was curious about it, since from the reports of his umbu that secretly watched Naruto for the past 2 years, he was living a normal, happy life as a civilian. Why do you want to become a shinobi, Naruto? What's your reason? Question A. Naruto thought about it for a minute since he had a lot of time thinking it over, and he wanted to say his feelings out loud to him. I want to become a shinobi because of you, but mostly because of what B-san and Yujito Nichin, replied Naruto. I looked at Naruto as he explained on why he wanted to become a ninja. He said that even though he was living a happy life now, with friends thanks to him, but he saw how people looked at how strong it was, but mostly on how he was so confident even when he was the Jinchuriki like him. Over the few years, Naruto had gotten along with B as role model, since like him, B had suffered as well. While he later met Yujito, which he found out that she was the Jinchuriki of Nibi no Bakeniko. Yujito had to work really hard as a shinobi since she wanted to prove that she was strong enough to use her power as a Jinchuriki to help the people she cared for. Naruto had witnessed from them the kind of confidence they had and care for the village they called home, which in return, they were respected and were beloved by others as heroes. Naruto wanted to do the same, since this village gave him things that Konoha didn't like: kindness and friendship. In fact, he told some of his friends that he was like Yujito and B, and that he was the Jinchuriki of Kyubi, which many had their own opinion from cool to scared, which a few stopped being his friend and gave a cold shoulder. When he heard this, he can tell from the look on Naruto's eyes that he was serious and determined to become strong and protect the village with his life if he needed to. As he looked at Naruto, he had an idea pop into his head. From the look on his face, he is telling the truth. I guess hanging out with B and Yujito did a lot of good for him, as well as seeing me in command. With his mindset, he can become an excellent shinobi like his father. That's IT. If I make a deal with him that would motivate him, then I can see how strong the bloodline of the heir and final known member of the Namikaze/Uzumaki clan. Thought A. All right, then Naruto, you can go join the academy, said which Naruto smiled about it, but then stopped when he spoke up again. With that being said, how about we make a little wager on it? Smirk A. Wager? What kind of wager? Confused Naruto. How about this? If you have all excellent grade from here to graduation and graduate as Rookie of the Year, I will tell you on who are your parents. Said Naruto was shocked as of right now. The Raikage was the one person right now, beside the third Hokage, to know on who his parents are, and he was willing to tell him about it. But before he can ask on why he can't tell him now, they spoke again. If you're wondering on why I just don't tell you on who they are is because you are still young and may take things the wrong way. With this, you'll mature on and learn things, as well as be more prepared to know on who your mother and father are. Plus, I know for a fact that your father was an honorable man who even I respected, and I feel that I would at least give him some respect and tell his son about him when he was ready, which I believe is when you become a shinobi. So what do you say? Do you agree on the wager? Asta. Naruto nodded in acceptance since the Raikage was only thinking on what's best for him. But of course the Raikage also said along with the gain, if Naruto doesn't graduate as Rookie of the Year, he wouldn't be told on who his parents are. In flashback, over the next 4 years, Naruto has studied and trained harder than anyone else in the Ninja Academy, so he can finally find out on who his parents are. While even though he has trained harder than anyone else, he also learned to enjoy life as Killer Bee, while Yujito help him giving some valuable advice. Why have power when you don't have a reason to use it for? So over the years, Naruto had made friends with his classmates when he wasn't studying or training. He would hang out and enjoy life like any other kid. But now, he couldn't help but think on what he learned from the Raikage. To know that the Yondaime Hokage, the one that sealed the Kyuubi inside him, was his own father was stunning to him, as well as to know that his own mother was the former Jinchuriki of Kyuubi no Yoko. As he learned on his parents' identity, he wondered on what happened to them since he guessed that they died on the day he was born. Even though he thought about it, he had to put that aside from his mind for now, since he had his Genin final exam to pass, which he would then become a shinobi for Kyumo and his next step on becoming the next Raikage Kyumo's academy. In the classroom, there were students walking in and having some fun or preparing for the Genin exam that they were going to do. As they were chatting around with friends or preparing on what to expect for Genin exam, the most of the girls in the room just noticed the heartthrob of their class walk-in. Walking in was Naruto, who for past 4 years in the academy has grown not only as a shinobi but also as person. Naruto had a cheerful, friendly, and fun attitude that got along pretty well with everyone, but that was only when he wasn't serious or on guard for anything. When Naruto was serious, he was a completely different person, which all the academy students know, which he turns from a fun guy into a serious, focused, strong shinobi that the girls like, plus the clothing he was wearing also highlight as well. Naruto has grown from the 5-year-old child that was too scared to sleep at night into a strong 12-year-old. He was fairly tall for someone his age. He was 4 feet 9 inches foot tall. He wore a dark, baggy cargo pants that had compact pockets on its sides with steel-tip boots. He wore a sleeveless fishnet shirt underneath his sleeveless dark green vest. He also was wearing black fingerless gloves with a flat metal piece on the back of his hands, while also having both his forearms bandaged up from the wrist to the elbow. On his back, he had one of few weapons that made everyone know how strong he is. On his back, he had a durable bow, similar to Hawkeye in the Avengers without the laser sights, but no arrows. The reason why he doesn't have any arrows behind his back is because he has his arrows on his left forearm, sealed inside, waiting to be unsealed, which he had a total of 20 arrows in 2 seals, which was below another the main seal, where he had his kunai, 10, on his right forearm. He had 3 more seals on him that had another pair of kunai, 10, with 2 seals that hold pairs of shuriken, 10 each. Of course, the students in the room knew that the bow was the only visible weapon, since Naruto had a few more hidden things and abilities that he trained hard to master that gave him the nickname from his peers, the Yellow Blade. As Naruto entered the classroom, he made his way to his seat near his good friend Omoy. Naruto and Omoy had a pretty good relationship, which many believe that they were best friends. Of course, many girls had asked or bribed Omoy into helping them get Naruto to be their boyfriend, but to no avail. Omoy was a tall, bit smaller than Naruto, 4 feet 6 inches foot, wearing standard shinobi clothing, black pants, shinobi sandals, and brown shirt. That was comfortable but reliable in the field, while also wearing a katana as well as having a weapons pouch on his waist. He had a dull face that would turn serious when he starts overthinking on things that could get him in trouble or leading up to trouble, which Naruto finds it funny sometimes on the fact that they are beyond reason. Omoy saw Naruto take his seat next to him and tried to start a conversation with him, but saw that Naruto had a serious face on him, which he can tell that Naruto had something important in his mind. As Omoy looked at him, While Naruto's fan club looked at Naruto's serious face, Naruto was thinking about his parents, the Yondaime Hokage, and the previous Jinchuriki of Kyuubi, while also thinking what he has gone through in Konoha, then here in Kumo. With his parents, he had so many questions since his father being the Yondaime Hokage, while his mother was the former Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. Even though he has so many questions on finding out that his hero he admired back in Konoha was his father that sealed Kyuubi in him, while wondering on what happened to his mother. He also thought on how the old man, the third Hokage, had lied to him his face since he asked several times on who his parents are, and he said he doesn't know or some other excuse. Before he can even start thinking about them, he decided to put it at the back of his head for now, since he has Genin test to pass right now. Remembering the material for the exam also got him remembering on how he first started school, when he was 5, just started to learn on how to read, write, and math. Naruto was only 5 when he started to go to civilian school in order to learn. At the beginning, he was having a hard time learning since he wasn't taught much academic stuff, and the curriculum required him to know this. But thanks to some students he made friends with, as well as some helpful shinobi teachers that understood his problem, he was able to learn how to read, write, and do mathematics to the standard requirement. Of course, that was only the requirement during his own time. He studied just any regular kid his age would do, while having fun with his friends after school and such. It wasn't until he joined Kumo's Shinobi Academy, as well as the bet he made with A, that he completely applied himself in his studies, while also learning to enjoy hanging out with his friends. During his time in the academy, he found that he had a real knack on Fuinjutsu, art of seals. It all started when he was in his 3rd year, when the academy teachers started teaching them the areas of ninjutsu. Flashback. It was early afternoon. The entire class had just finished with their lunch break and was now ready to go on with class. Everyone was relieved to end their class of outside taijutsu and were excited to finally start learning the awaited subject that everyone wanted to do, ninjutsu. Class was now midway when the teacher started to explain on ninjutsu, which everyone had the look of joy since many wanted to learn how to do cool ninjutsu. Of course, the instructors saw the looks, which they decided to drop the ball on them, which they said that they will learn ninjutsu in their final year, not this year. This got the class down when the instructors told them that they were going to explain on the different types of ninjutsu. All right, class. Getting the class attention. Who can tell me the areas of ninjutsu? Many wondered on what it could be, where many didn't know what were it, but a few students who studied on it answer it. The answers in ninjutsu were Jinjutsu, illusion, Ninpo and elemental jutsu, Kinjutsu, forbidden techniques, and finally Fuinjutsu, the art of seals and sealing. All right, now class. As for those of you who become shinobi, these are the techniques that many of you would know. Now, I'll start with the first part, Jinjutsu. One by one, the instructor explained as simply as he can on what each ninjutsu does. Many were surprised to know the types of ninjutsu that require chakra, such as Jinjutsu can help put people in an illusion world or help hide you from anyone. Ninpo and elemental jutsu can be used in anything from multiplying a single shuriken into dozens of shuriken, while the elemental styles can use from any of the 5 known elements: wind, lightning, water, earth, and fire. Kinjutsu are forbidden arts, where the caster would have to give up something, whether it could do extreme physical damage to using your soul or other souls as payment for dangerous form. When the teacher started to explain on Fuinjutsu, all right, now we're in the final part of ninjutsu, which is Fuinjutsu, the art of seals/sealing. Now, who can tell me on some of the benefits on learning Fuinjutsu? Asked the teacher. Many were thinking about it, but Naruto raised his hand to answer. The teacher acknowledges him. All right, Uzumaki-sen, what are the benefits of Fuinjutsu? Well, Fuinjutsu can be used in a few ways that I can think of. One way is that you can use it to seal equipment, such as rope, shinobi wire, or any sort of weapons into a simple scroll, which can lessen the load a person carries. Another is that you can protect any type of important documents or things into a special type of seal, which would only allow the caster or the person to open. And finally, The last thing I can think of is that it can be used to help seal off a person churka with a specific type of seal. Answer Naruto. Many were impressed on how Naruto knew what to answer, which the teacher happy smiled and said that he was right on a few of the things he said. Once the teacher explained to the class about, it was then that class was going to end for the day. The professor then explained to them on their homework for the night. In flashback, it was during the lesson of Fuinjutsu that he started getting interested in it. After he completed his homework, which in all he was right, but it was the Fuinjutsu part of the homework that he excelled the most in. He then focused his time in going to the library whenever he had enough free time to see books and scroll, whichever Kumo had, on learning Fuinjutsu. Reading on Fuinjutsu, which confused more than most people, but came naturally to him like he was born in no Fuinjutsu. He practices it until he had one conversation with Yujito. Flashback. Yujito was walking into a dango shop to have a sweet snack when she spotted 11-year-old Naruto sitting at a bench nearby. After she got her order, she went to him to see him reading a scroll of sealing from Kumo's shinobi library. "Hey, Naruto, is it a scroll of Fuinjutsu?" asked Yujito. Naruto looked up to see Yujito, which he nodded. "Hi, Yujito-ne. Why are you reading a scroll on Fuinjutsu?" questioned Yujito. Naruto took a moment to pause this since he wanted to be very clear to Yujito. After a few moments, he said, "Well, ever since we started to learn on what ninjutsu is and how Fuinjutsu works, I've grown a lot of interest. Knowing on how, in the right order and style, you could do almost anything with it." Yujito can understand it since she always wanted to learn on how to use Fuinjutsu, but given how difficult to learn it, as well as Kumo not having any real seal masters, which the best they had were above mid-average in the art, she had to give it up. It was then Yujito's thoughts stopped when she heard Naruto say, "Given on how I like reading Fuin and wanted to learn it, along with the fact that Kumo's doesn't have a real seal master, I'm going to become a Kumo's greatest seal master, along with being the next Raikage." In flashback. With that, Naruto worked hard, and with only a few tips from the teachers and relying solely on scroll and books on Fuinjutsu, he was able to get a good grasp on it, that he was on Chunin LV Sealer. His thoughts ended when he heard the academy teacher coming in and telling them that they're going to start now. With that, Naruto's attention had stopped from his thoughts about the past and focused on the here and now. Raikage's office. As Naruto was busy with Jinin exam, it was focusing on the files before him. He was currently looking over the files on, quite possibly on his future Jinin teams. He read each academy student's files until he came up to the final bits, which are the files that were the most interesting. One was the possible Kunoichi of the year, while the second was golden for Rookie of the Year, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As he read Naruto's stats, he couldn't believe on how much his bet motivated him to get to a level where he can be on even playing field with mid-LV Chunin, even though he has yet to start learning the basic churka control exercises yet. In fact, it has asked on a record of a student who had the same LV as Naruto in the academy, which he was surprised to know that it has been over 15 years since a prodigy like Naruto has been around. He couldn't help but smile, since even though he never had planned to know that Naruto is seeking his position when he grows up, he couldn't help but smile about since Naruto has proven that he is very capable and loyalty to his friends. Things around the elemental nations are going to become very interesting. A suddenly thought as he decided on who would be on each team, academy. It has been over an hour since the test began. For the first half hour of class, the instructor explained on what was going to be on the test, which many had their own worries and such. For others, they were confident that all the studying and practice they did was more than enough. Once the explanation was done, the written test was begun, which many were having difficulty in. Naruto was completely bored in taking the test since he knew all the answers from the start, where he looked like he was just dribbling around his paper with a bored look. He checked around to see that his friend Omoy and his best friend, Samui, were doing all right. Naruto couldn't believe on how much Samui has changed over the years. She was now 4 feet 3 inches foot tall and had cut her long straight blonde hair for a shorter version just around her chin. She wore a gray revealing mini skirt with a tight, white short-sleeved tank shirt over a sleeveless fishnet shirt. She also carried her weapons and supplies on her utility belt, while also have her katana strapped behind her back. Samui's body were already started to show signs of her becoming more womanly, as the stage for her breasts started to develop and her body started to be cavia. With Omoi, he can tell that he was having one of his episodes on where he was thinking of the consequences of not writing the right answer, while he saw that Samui was doing great. Over the years, since they first met, both Naruto and Samui had grown close. Well, as close as Kumo's most famous Ice Queen can get. Naruto can remember on when he and Samui met again in the Shinobi Academy. Flashback. Naruto was only 8 years old when he started at the academy. He was in class, sitting around, enjoying on seeing all the new faces around him. Earlier, he was outside the entrance of the academy, where he saw the Raikage give a small speech for all of the students who will not become Kumo's future shinobi. As he was sitting down looking at the new faces, one in particular stood out. On his left side, he saw a pale girl with dark blue eyes and long blonde hair, with an emotionless expression on her face. When he looked at her, he saw her looking back at him. They both looked at each other for a moment, before the girl looked annoyed and turned away from him. Naruto continued to look at the girl whom he decided to try and talk to her since he felt like he knows her. Before he could ask, the shinobi instructors came into the class and started things off. They explained on what was going to be necessary for being a shinobi. They then got everyone in the class to introduce themselves from where they were sitting. As the class went down, it came down to Naruto's turn, whose mind was still on the girl. "Hey you!" Naruto snapped out of his thoughts when the instructor yelled at him. "Stop spacing out and introduce yourself." "Hi, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, and my dream is to become the next Raikage of Kumo," said Naruto. Once he was done, the next kid went on until it made it to the girl, who she introduces herself. "Hello, my name is Samui. I wanted to be a strong and cool kunoichi." When a lot of the boys saw Samui for the first time, they couldn't help but think on how cute she looks, even with the emotionless look on her face. It was then that Naruto remembered on who she was. He remembered that it was the girl he sort of made friends with back when he first walked around Kumo. During lunch break, Naruto quickly went to find her, which he did sitting all alone at the back of the school, where many of the other children don't come around. He calmly walked up to her. As he got close enough, Samui spoke. "What do you want? It's uncool for someone to just look at them all day and then finding me like this. Are you a stalker?" asked Samui. "No, I'm no stalker, especially to the girl I first met when I first came into Kumo 3 years ago," answered Naruto. Samui looked at Naruto, and then she remembered seeing a blonde spiky hair boy with blue cerulean eyes and 3 whisker marks on both his cheeks. In flashback, after reuniting after 3 years, both Naruto and Samui had an all-right relationship. For Naruto, he treated her like a friend, instead as a goddess that the other boys always do. Samui treated Naruto like everyone else in the academy, coldly. But it wasn't until he beat her in taijutsu training in the academy that she acknowledges him as her equal. Over the years after their battle, both Naruto and Samui's relationship had increased steadily. They would always hang out with each other while also helping each other out. Naruto helped Samui out with a lot of stuff that she wanted help in, such as taijutsu and ninjutsu, while Samui helped Naruto out by when he asked her to help him. Their relationship was so close to each other that many people thought they were dating, even though they were kids, but it wasn't true, well, at least half the time. Naruto treated Samui like a true kunoichi, like Samui did the same with Naruto. But sometimes Samui always got an annoying feeling whenever she saw one of Naruto's fangirls try to get him on a date or asking him to be their boyfriend. Later, it's been a few hours since the written exam, which after the test the students were given an hour off for them to have lunch or to loosen themselves up from the written portion, where they can also get ready for the physical part of the exam. Once everyone had finished their break, the students came back to the academy where they waited outside the academy's training area for students. Naruto was currently with Samui, along with Omoi, where they waited for the instructors to come out. As they waited, A lot of the girls who were in Naruto's fan club wanted to go and confess or ask him out on a date, but were hesitant since they saw that Samui was nearby him. Now, normally it wouldn't be a problem, but it was just that Samui was the strongest kunoichi in class and best student next to Naruto. The instructors came out once everyone in class had arrived. They began to test out everyone's shuriken and kunai skills. Everyone scored average or above average, where some actually scored high. Only Naruto and Samui scored perfect scores. For extra credit, they were allowed to use any other form of throwing weapon, which only a few did. With Naruto, he used his bow. Naruto went to the target range, where he asked for moving targets, which the instructors did. The instructors put 4 moving targets, 2 of a distance of 500 yards and 2 at 1,000 yards away. Naruto unsealed his arrows and shot, which he hit dead center at the 2 500 yards ones, while the 2 1,000 yards ones got 1 bullseye and almost onto dead center. Next came up was the taijutsu exam, which many were thrilled and worried about. One by one, each student went against each other, while the instructors watched to see the level of each student possessed. Naruto saw Omoi go up and won his match, although he saw Omoi was having some difficult, which he could understand since Omoi was more on Kenjutsu than Taijutsu. After a little while, Samui went up to win her match as well, which she finished in a fast pace. Finally came Naruto's turn, which was unfortunate for his opponent since he was beaten in less than 10 seconds. Finally came up the ninjutsu test, which everyone was succeeding or failing on the 3 known jutsu that all genin needed to know: transformation, substitution, and clone jutsu. When Naruto's turn came up, he went into a different room where the test was being taken. Naruto did both the transformation and substitution jutsu perfectly. When the Bunshin jutsu came up, he would have been worried, but thanks to Killer Bee, he was confident about it. Flashback. Naruto was alone, looking over a lake that he sometimes to train on his simple ninjutsu. Currently, he was trying everything he can on doing a simple clone, which wasn't going so good. Naruto was about to call a day when he looked behind him to see Killer Bee. Bee-sama surprised Naruto. "Hey Naruto, what's with the look? It doesn't match your attitude." Asked Bee. "I've been trying to perfect the Bunshin no Jutsu, but I can't seem to do it," and annoyed Naruto. It was then that Killer Bee told him about his problem, since he can understand it too well. He explained, rap, about how his Biju was giving him an extra boost of power where it made it difficult to use little amount of chakra. Killer Bee decided to teach Naruto a different Bunzim Jutsu that would allow him to learn it. In flashback, Naruto created a lightning clone jutsu, where Naruto created a lightning clone. With that, Naruto had passed the academy and graduated from it as well. Once the exam was over, everyone was free for the next hour for them to relax, while the instructors finish up grading up the final portions. Later, final break has ended, where all the students returned to their classroom for the last time. The grades were given out, where Naruto was given the Rookie of the Year title, and Samui was given the Kunoichi of the Year. With that being said and done, the class was dismissed. For those who graduated, they would return in 3 days' time for team placements. Everyone went outside, where many parents were out waiting to congratulate or comfort their children on who passed or failed. Naruto walked away from the academy and headed back home to his apartment, since now he can focus his feelings of finding out that his father was the Yondaime Hokage and his mother being the last Jinchuriki of Kyuubi. Before Naruto could even get about 50 meters away from the academy, Omoi came walking up to him. "Hey Naruto, yo bro, what's wrong with you? You seem spaced out about something," Omoi asked out of concern. Naruto shook his head. "Nothing is wrong. I've just got a lot on my mind right now." "On what?" curios Omoi. "I spoke to the Raikage earlier today, before going to class, and told me something personal. I won't go into details, but right now, I just need some time to be by myself," answered Naruto. "All right then. But before you do, I believe we should go and eat something first. If you're going to be thinking for a while, I suggest you do it with a full stomach so you won't be distracted by anything," said Omoi. Naruto was about to decline until Omoy went on one of his scenario episodes. But if you eat too much, you might get a stomach ache, which you would then be thinking on how to relax it, or if you don't. Naruto just sighed at Omoy antics, but decided to go and eat since he was going to be thinking about his parents for a while. Once Naruto got Omoy to calm down from his antics, both of them were about to walk off when Naruto noticed Samui being somewhat harassed from her male fan club members on going on date with one of them as a celebration. Before Samui can say drop dead, they heard Naruto calling out to Samui. Oi, Samui-chan, Omoy and I are going to get something to eat. Want to come along? Aye, that's a cool idea. I'll join you both, answered Samui. The guys were disappointed since Naruto had gotten their goddess to go with him. Samui walked along with Naruto and Omoy behind them, since he had seen the signs that both of them had some feelings for each other, even though he knew that Naruto had a thick head about women and didn't understand their feelings that well, while Samui stubbornly refused to let her feelings out to anyone, even with her emotionless appearance. As Omoy looked at them from their backs, both Naruto and Samui were having their own conversation. So Samui-chan, congrats on being this year's Kunoichi of the year. I know that you deserve it for all the effort you put into it, said Naruto. Thanks you, Naruto-san, but I have to admit that it was cool of you to help me when I asked for your help, since that was part of the reason I did so well, replied Samui. What are you going to do from here on out? What kind of people you want to be in a team with? Asked Naruto. I would prefer a team where we get the job done and avoid having someone who isn't up to par with me, since I prefer not to babysit anyone during a mission, since it would be uncool to have to focus not only on the mission but also your teammate, answered Samui. Yeah, I have to agree on that too, replied Naruto. Both of them continued a conversation with each other with Omoy jumped in to talk with them. They all went to a barbecue restaurant for their celebration. As they ate, Samui noticed that Naruto had other things on his mind, since even though they were having an alright time, she saw that Naruto had other things in his mind. It's been 3 days since the Academy Genin exams for Kumo. For the last 3 days, those that have passed the test have been doing whatever they wanted to do. Some went ahead and relaxed for a bit. Others continued to train hard, and the last had prepared on what they would need. For Naruto, it had been 3 days of nothing but personal thought and issues. The last 3 days were nothing more than thinking and rethinking about what the Raikage had said to him. The day he took his Genin exams was also the day that the Raikage told him that his parents were the Yondaime Hokage of Konoha, Minato Namikaze, and the former Jinchuriki of Kyubi, Kushina Uzumaki. He had so many thoughts. First, he thought about his father, the one that saved Konoha, the one that sealed the Kyubi inside him, and the one that even now he considered his hero was his father. There were so many thought and feels going through him that he felt completely lost. He questioned on why the fourth used his own son to seal the Kyubi in him. He then questioned on why the third, who acted like his grandfather sometimes, didn't tell him that he was the son of the greatest Hokage Konoha has ever had, or why the third lied to him in his face the few times he asked on who his parents are. He was completely confused about the whole situation. He then thought about his mother. For the first time, he now knew why he didn't have a mother, because he knew from Yujito and Killer Bee that told him that once a Biju is pulled out from the Jinchuriki would die. He wondered so many times on what his mother was like that he cried himself to sleep on nights he could sleep, thinking that she abandoned him because of what his father did or because she died with him. He was happy to know that she died since now he knew he was never abandoned and was glad to finally know what her name was. Even though he was somewhat happy to know that his parents did abandon him, other questions popped into his head. Did they love him? Was he a mistake? Why did they die? For a while, that along with other things just kept eating at him. He even trained himself to exhaustion to try to think clearly about the situation. Thankfully, Yujito came to help him. The Raikage explained to her about the bet he made with Naruto about his parents' identity. Yujito was surprised to know about the bet they made years ago. Yujito wanted to know on whose Naruto's parents are since she was just as curious, but instead to talk to Naruto about it since he's the only one to have that right to say who are his parents. Yujito talked to Naruto for a bit, which helped him out for a bit since Yujito helped answer some of Naruto's more easier questions but questions about feelings or about the past were the ones that were left unanswered. In the end, Naruto was able to put some of his issues away, but he still had other questions, mostly about his heritage since he knew he was from the Uzumaki clan and now from the Namikaze clan, but for now, he was content on knowing his family. Academy. The students that passed Kumo's Genin exam were waiting in their old classroom for the last time to see who will be teamed up. Naruto was sitting in the left row, center table, left seat where the windows were located. He looked outside through the window, just watching the day go by. He is currently thinking on who would be on his team since he only wanted 2 people to join him, Samui and Omoy. After waiting for a while, everyone was now calmly sitting down on the seats they picked when the sensei came into the room. Omoy took his seat next to Naruto, which Naruto silently was thankful because Omoy helped keep his fangirl away from him. He saw Samui sitting in the front center row of the class. All right, class, this would probably be the last time we see each other in class. From this point, what you do will not only impact you, but also in Kumo, so work hard and stay safe. Now, for the team placements, where we will tell you where you'll then meet your sensei. The shinobi then started to go down the list, giving each potential Jin in the team they were assigned. Many kunoichi wanted to be on Naruto's team, while the male wanted to be in a team with Samui. It went on until it reached Team 8. Next, Team 8 will consist of Sora, Ryo, and S. Your sensei will be Saito. Now, for Team 9, Naruto Uzumaki. This caught Naruto attention, as well as almost every available kunoichi that hasn't yet been placed on a team. Samui, Omio, and Karui. Your sensei will be Killer Bee. Naruto was surprised to know that Killer Bee will be his sensei, but figured that the Raikage would want someone who can teach Naruto on how to control his Biju, which he thought it would be Yujito, while also making sure his other 3 teammates will be well trained. He was also surprised to see Karui would be his 4th teammate, since she was one of the few girls that don't want to date him. Samui was surprised as well, which she barely showed it on her face, knowing that the Raikage's brother will be teaching him, while pleased to know that Naruto would be on her team, as well as Omio. She, of course, was upset to know that Karui would be on her team, since she knew that Karui isn't up to snip yet, but she has proven that she was an average Kenjutsu fighter. The shinobi instructors continue on with the last team, where they then told each team on where to meet their sensei. After that, they were all dismissed. With Team 9, Naruto and Samui were walking alongside each other, while Omoy and Karui walked behind them. As they walked, Karui tried to figure out on what to say since it was eerily quiet among them. Before she can say anything, Samui spoke up. So Naruto-san, do you mind explaining to me on why you've been so quiet today? You're usually more active than you really are. So what seems to be the problem? Samui asked with curiosity. Omoy was also just as curious since he knows Naruto pretty well to know that something must be bugging him. Karui was the only one that didn't understand on what they meant. Karui was one of the few girls that actually didn't act like a fangirl, but still had some feelings for him, but was still unaware on how Naruto acted since she never actually became friends with him. Naruto thought about Samui's question for a minute, since this was really hard matter to speak about, one that he still has yet to settle. He thought about it until he decided to tell them cause Samui might give him her 2 cents about the matter. What if you find out that you're the legacy of not one, but 2 of the greatest shinobi in the world, which one you admired for so long, while the other is from a legendary clan, as well as knowing that your father was the one that cursed you, explained Naruto. That got all 3 of his teammates into a surprised and curious mode. For Karui, she couldn't believe that Naruto was the legacy of 2 powerful shinobi, which was one of many things that Naruto's fan club wanted to know. Samui and Omoy were just as interested since they knew a lot about Naruto, and for him to say something like that was kind of weird. Omoy decided to break the silence, saying, "Dude, what do you mean?" asked. "I spoke to the Raikage a couple of days ago, since I won the bet that we made a couple of years ago. Even though the 3rd Hokage kept a secret from me, even before I was brought to Kumo, it didn't mean that there were others that didn't know who knew him and can't put 2 and 2 together with me," said Naruto. "What are you talking about, Naruto-san?" questioned Samui. Raikage-sama told about my mother and father, answered Naruto. This surprised even Samui, since she knew that Naruto doesn't know who his parents were from the times they talked, eat, and trained together. She always wondered who they were, since she in the same boat as him and didn't know her own parents, but learned something about them from her older brother. She especially knew that Naruto wanted to know who they were. But now, she couldn't help but wonder on whose legacy that Naruto was carrying. Omio and Karui were just as stunned about the situation. Omoi couldn't believe that the Raikage could tell Naruto or know such a secret, while Karui wondered on who his parents were since the way he said, his parents must be powerful people. Before they can even press on about the subject, Naruto just said to drop it since he still has issues about it for now. Samui and the others agreed with Naruto's request and decided to just meet up with their new sensei. Later, it's been about a few minutes when Naruto and the others reached the meeting place, where they waited for Killer Bee. The meeting was located at the same place where Naruto first went to when he learned that he was the Jinchuriki of Kyubi at a park near the lake. They only waited for a bit before Killer Bee showed up, and of course he showed up in his own style. "Hey boys and girls, it's me you see, your new sensei, the great Killer Bee." "Ah yeah," yelled out Killer Bee. Everyone saw Killer Bee come out of the lake in his Biju mode, which surprised everyone, even Naruto, since this is the first time that he has seen Killer Bee go Biju. When everyone saw the Hachibi form, they were scared, but then surprised when it shrunk down into Killer Bee himself. He then walked up to them to greet them more properly, which was bumping fists. Naruto was the first to get out of the shock feeling that Killer Bee gave them. He gave him a fist bump. Samui was the second to come out of the shock feeling, then Omoi and Karui. Samui, Omoi, and Karui saw Naruto bump fists together, which they both greeted each other like usual. Then he turned to his three other new students and held out a fist. They were curious about it, which Naruto explained to them. "Guys, he wants you to bump fists with him. This is B-sensei's way of greeting new people." The others nodded, which each one gave him a fist bump. After that, B did his weird rap on everyone saying to introduce themselves so they can know each other better. Naruto decided to go up first. "Hi, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen, gardening, Fuinjutsu, and my friends. My dislikes are people who mistreat others for something they don't understand. My hobbies are training hard, studying in new Fuinjutsu, gardening. My dream is for one day to start a family, being a master Fuinjutsu, and become the next Raikage." After Naruto introduced himself, the others went up. "My name is Samui. My likes are a secret. My dislikes are people who aren't cool. My hobbies are training, improving my Kenjutsu, reading cool books. My dreams are none of your business," Samui plainly said. Next, Omoi and Karui told their team about what they like, dislike, hobbies, and dreams. After the Genin tell a little bit about themselves, Killer Bee wrapped away his own introduction. "Now with your intro is done, it's time for the rhyme master, Killer Bee, to sing up his intro. Rap B, as he did it in his own hip-hop dance way. My name is Killer Bee, you see. I'm the eight-tailed beast, you see. I like my bro as well as my swords. I don't diss anyone or anything. I like to write and sing my rhymes. And my dream is my own tale to tell," which everyone had a sweat drop on their heads. After introducing each other, Killer Bee stated there was one more test for them to take before they can become Genin. Karui complained about it, while Omoi was worried on what kind of impossible test they might have to take. Naruto and Samui weren't worried since they thought they'll be able to handle it. Karui shouted out, "What kind of test are we taking then for us to become shinobi?" Killer Bee just smirked, saying, "That's my tale to tell. Come at the morn in my turf to find out the task at hand." With that, Killer Bee told them where to meet in the morning and left his possible Genin team to be ready for tomorrow. Weeks later. It has been over a month since Naruto and his team became Genin. Naruto was grateful to know that he, Samui, and Omoi worked well together from Killer Bee's test. Karui was another problem, but after some lecture during the test, they were all able to pass. Flashback. Currently, Naruto was hiding inside some bushes as he was trying to figure out on how to take Killer Bee's sunglasses. Earlier, Killer Bee told them that for them to become Kumo's genin, they needed to pass is to steal his sunglasses, but of course this can only be applied for only one person since only one person can pass this test. With that, Killer Bee began the test, which all four of them separated. After thinking it over, Naruto figured that the only way he can pass this test was to first get the others to help out, and they can then figure on how to solve the situation. He quickly left his hiding spot to find Samui, Omoi, and Karui to get them on helping each other on stealing Killer Bee glasses. After a bit of searching, Naruto found Samui and Omoi, who agreed to Naruto's plan and agreed to put their personal matters on becoming shinobi on hold after they retrieved Killer Bee's sunglasses. But before they went to get Karui, all of them spotted Karui challenging Killer Bee, which all of three of them thought on how much of an idiot she is. After a few minutes of fighting, Karui was brought down. At that moment, Naruto and the rest of the team went ahead with their own plan. They each positioned themselves on their designated spots in order to prepare their chance. Once Karui was down, they made their move. Naruto had his bow ready at a nice distance, where he can move quickly and help his friends. Naruto shot his bow at Killer Bee's face, which he caught the arrow in his hands, but was surprised on what happened next. The arrow had a special smokescreen paper bomb. As the paper bomb exploded, all three moved in on Killer Bee. Samui and Omoi had their katanas in their hands. As the smokescreen was still on the field, Killer Bee could sense the attacks that were coming, which he dodged several slash and strike from Samui and Omoi. Killer Bee had the advantage until he saw several arrows coming at him, so he dodges all of them, which the last one he bent down to avoid. With Killer Bee bent down, Omoi went in for the glasses, only to be surprised by Killer Bee when he jumped up into the air. Of course, Samui jumped into the air, hoping that Omoi did his part to get Killer Bee into the air to avoid Omoi's assault. The plan worked as she saw Killer Bee coming out of the smoke cloud, which he saw Samui waiting to strike at him. Samui was about to use her sword for a slash with her left hand, while she was ready to use her right to get Killer Bee's sunglasses. But unfortunately, Killer Bee predicted this, which is why he used his substitution jutsu with Karui when Samui tried to capture him. As Killer Bee exited the smokescreen, he was surprised by the sudden arrows that were coming at him. Killer Bee dodged it, only to be surprised by the person who shot at him from behind. After shooting his arrows at a very close range away from the smokescreen, he immediately, in full speed, got behind Killer Bee to strike at him. Naruto used his specially made bow to attack Killer Bee. Normally, those who are long-range specialists who use weapons like bow for long range would not be very strong in close-range combat. But Naruto made sure he trained himself to fight in any range, close mid-long range attacks. As Naruto used his bow to help confuse Killer Bee, Samui quickly came behind Killer Bee in order to trap him, but Killer Bee jumped over her. Naruto didn't stop his assault, as he used the moment that Killer Bee made to help out Samui. He quickly used his bow to balance out Samui by putting her inside his bow and turned her around, as well as used a string as a type of spring. He then jumped up and pulled his bow away from Samui to let her keep running towards Bee. Samui was surprised on what Naruto did, but immediately knew what he was up to, which she was grateful since Bee has yet to land from his jump. Samui had a perfect push as Naruto used the moment to jump behind Samui, while she also ducked a bit to let the bow go over her easier, giving her a perfect start run at Bee. As Samui went after Killer Bee, Naruto had prepared another arrow to shoot at Bee. Once Bee landed, he turned to see Samui coming at him. Before he can counter, an arrow came past Samui's left side and went for Killer Bee. Naruto shot his arrow at Bee once he landed, but of course aimed to make sure he didn't hit Samui. As Killer Bee dodged the arrow, he had to deal with Samui, which she used her sword to get him off balance. Killer Bee was about to counterattack, but his attention was diverted when Omoi came out of the smokescreen that was now dissipating. He made sure to distract Bee long enough for Naruto to come from above to surprise him with a sudden leg strike on his shoulder. This caused Killer Bee to be stunned for a moment, which Omoi used a sheath to hold Bee's arms long enough for Samui to get his glasses. Killer Bee would have done something, but he was caught once again since Naruto, placing his bow on a bee to decrease B's chance of extending his arms to try anything. Samui would have caught him at that moment, but Killer Bee had a physical advantage, which he used it by leaning towards the right, which got Omoi off balance. With this, Killer Bee was able to get some leverage and got himself free from Omoi's hold, but also away from Samui's grasp. Killer Bee then moved away from the others, while taking out Naruto's bow off of him. Once he did, he decided to end this battle after dodging an attack from Karui, who waited for her chance to get him. Later, currently, Killer Bee was now standing in front of his probable Genin team, as they were tied up together. In the end, Killer Bee used his supreme speed to move fast enough to knock out everyone, except for Naruto. Unlike the other three, Naruto was able to avoid 2 strikes before Killer Bee took him down. Killer Bee raps a compliment to Naruto, Samui, and Omoi on working together, while Karui got one that made her look like an idiot. With that, Killer Bee passed all 3 of them, while Karui would be sent back to the academy. Karui was upset about it, but then Naruto spoke up saying that since she was part of their team, then he would join her if she was forced to leave, making sure that Karui doesn't have to be humiliated by herself. Samui and Omoi agreed with Naruto on it, even though Omoi was having second thoughts about it. As Killer Bee was going to make his decision, Karui spoke up saying that she failed and would go back to the academy by herself since it wouldn't be right for the others. Plus, she secretly thought if Naruto was sent back to the academy, then she would hunt it down by all his fangirls. As they waited for Killer Bee to say that they're going back to the academy, they then heard Killer Bee say that they passed. Everyone was surprised to hear on what he said. Killer Bee started to explain on what this test was about. Think the bell test from Kakashi. In flashback, as Naruto finished thinking about his Genin test, his mind went back to the mission that he was currently in. Right now, Team 9 with Killer Bee as their sensei was doing a C-rank mission. The mission was to go hunt down some bandits that were robbing and causing trouble from one of their allies, which they were sent to take care of it. After 5 days of tracking them from the last place they strike, they were able to find the group. They spotted about 15 men enjoying the fruits of their latest steal. They were planning something when Omoi spotted something from the group. He saw that the leader of the group was a Nuke-nin, which they Samui identified as a C-class criminal. Killer Bee said that he won't go up against them, unless he have to, since this is where they were allowed to shine. Naruto planned things out. He would attack at long distance, provide not only cover for everyone, but also keep an eye out for anyone trying to escape. Samui, Omoi, and Karui would lead in a surprise attack that Naruto would provide with his arrows. After waiting for about 5 minutes for everyone to take their place, Naruto summoned one of his arrows and equipped it with a paper smokescreen. He took aim for the most appropriate spot for all of his team to take advantage, but mostly to make sure to blind the wanted C-class Nuke-nin. The bandits didn't know what hit them once Naruto's arrow exploded on contact. The black smokescreen that filled the area had caught most of the bandits there, but mostly at the Nuke-nin. From there, Samui quickly ran for the March 1st bandits that were close to her, which she quickly took them down with extreme speed and precision. Karui took down 2 bandits herself with strong back head kicks. Omoi jumped down from the tree that he snuck in to land on top of his opponent instant to bring down, then moved on to the next 2 that were in front of him. Naruto kept a close eye from the tree that he was in to make sure that everyone was all right. As he looked on, he noticed that some of the bandits got into groups, getting ready to counterattack. Naruto saw that it was kind of like a shinobi formation, which he guessed that the Nuke-nin taught them. He decided to stop that by sending one of his explosive paper bomb arrow at the side of them, which not only the explosion informed his friends on where the explosive was, but also to push back the bandits into the now clearing smokescreen, as well as disrupt their formation. Once the bandits were back into the smokescreen, one of the scattered bandits got up on his feet to just find Samui kicking him in the gut and neck chop him into the ground. Naruto watched as his team continues to finish up the ambush, but also wondering on where the C-rank Nuke-nin was hiding since he was trying to find him. Behind Naruto, the C-rank Nuke-nin was silently coming behind Naruto. He found Naruto sitting at a branch, observing the battle, as well as papering to fire another arrow as cover fire for his team as they fought. The Nuke found Naruto from the last explosion, since he figures if he caught him, then he could try and get his men back as well as get rid of his followers. Once he was in strike position, the Nuke strike at him with a kunai in hand, only to see that Naruto switched his bow around and used it as a defensive weapon. Naruto used his bow to slap away the kunai-held hand, but also used his arrow as a weapon as well. Naruto attempted to stab the Nuke only for him to get his barring back and avoid it. But that was what Naruto wanted, since he used the stab down as a decoy to flip himself with the momentum and caught the nin. He then maneuvered his bow to securely get the kunai off his opponent's hands, then used the bow as a chokehold, which he succeeded in taking him out. His team has finished taking care of the bandits when Omoy spoke up. "Where's the missing Nuke? Shouldn't he be around here?" worried. "Oh, he must have run off and left his comrades here since he figured he couldn't beat us," answered Karui. "You're probably right, Karui. However, it would be cool if we track him down to make sure that not another uncool group happens again," Samui stated coolly. Karui and Omoy agreed, which they were going to go get Naruto and Killer Bee when Killer Bee came out from where he was watching to tell them that it wasn't necessary. "Are you sure, Sensei? It could cause trouble if we let him get away," Omoy said as he started to mumble on a lot of the possible or impossible scenarios, but was stopped when Killer Bee said, "It cool. Don't be fool. Our little maelstrom has got it all." I said I suck at rapping. Before they can wonder on what Killer Bee meant, they heard a thump to see the C-rank Nuke tied up and unconscious while Naruto was carrying him over his shoulder. Naruto explained that the Nuke came behind him in order to take him down, but Naruto got the better of him. With that, they concluded that the mission was complete. Once they give the bandits to the proper forces to be arrested and or prison, they all went back home. As they were going home, Karui smiled, since not only did they completed their second C-rank mission, they were going to get a little bit of a bonus from the Nuke. As they were going, Samui noticed Naruto had one of his old texts on Fuinjutsu. "Naruto-san, why are you rereading your old Fuinjutsu book? I can understand you want to be Seal Master, but don't you think you would progress further if you get a more advanced version?" Samui stated. Naruto sighed, "I would like that, Samui. However, I already read almost all the Fuinjutsu scrolls and book in the Shinobi archives, but they were almost all the same knowledge like before, plus I asked Killer Bee if there was any Fuin specialist in Kyomo, but he said that most are either mid to high mid-rate specialists, but said that I was already near the knowledge that they have." Samui nodded in Naruto's plight as he then continued to speak. "If anything, I would like to get scrolls from someplace else, but many shinobi villages are very protective of their Fuinjutsus and stuff," said Naruto, while thinking, "If only I could go back to Konoha and get to my father's library, since I remember the Raikage said that my father was just as impressive in Fuinjutsu as my ancestors in the Uzumaki clan." "I can see your plight. It is uncool that you can't get any more training without someone who is master in the art to teach you. Too bad that any of your family in Yuzu no Kuni isn't around. You can probably ask one of them, if they trusted you enough, of course." It was then that Naruto got the idea. "Yuzu no Kuni, my mother's side of the family, that's it. Samui, if I could, I would kiss you right now," Naruto stated, which for a tiny moment, Samui actually blushed but was repressed down. "What do you mean?" asked Samui. "I'm going to my ancestors' home," said Naruto, which Samui didn't get, but listened to Naruto. "If my family was as skilled in seals, then it would only make sense that they must have hid something for only those with their bloodline could get, since after all, I am an Uzumaki in both name and in blood," smiled Naruto. With this, Naruto had made a new course in his life, which he knew, if anything, he has to go to Yuzu no Kuni to see not only his ancestors' home, but also find any of the treasures that were probably still hidden in it. 2 weeks later, Naruto was currently walking near the border of Hai no Kuni. As he was walking, he couldn't help but shudder a little bit, since he still remembered the time he lived in Konoha, the terrible times he had to endure before he was thrown to his death, and his decision to stay in Kyomo. As he was walking, he still wore the same outfit, except now he was wearing a black mask that covered his entire head, except his eyes, like Batman without the ears. The reason why Naruto was wearing a mask was to keep his identity a secret, since it doesn't want any Konoha shinobi that may be near the border of Hai no Kuni to recognize him. This idea came from the Raikage as part of a condition that Naruto must keep his identity safe until the right time came. As Naruto got the Raikage to agree for him to go to Yuzu no Kuni, but this agreement can only be achieved if Naruto agrees to wear the mask that was specially made for him to hide his identity, even from the Byakugan. As Naruto was walking closer to his ancestral homeland, he was being accompanied by the rest of his team, Team 9, except for Killer Bee. Instead of Killer Bee leading his team, it was his other fellow Jinchuriki, Yujito, and I. The reason Killer Bee wasn't leading Team 9, the Raikage needed Killer Bee to do something else. Along with Yujito, C was also accompanying them since the Raikage declared this mission a C rank to a possible B rank considering on what this excavation mission turns up. C was going along with Naruto and his team cause of the possible rank change, even though it was unlikely, but more for protection in case Konoha figures out Naruto's identity. While walking, he couldn't help but be grateful to A for letting him go on this personal mission, especially considering some of the convincing he had to give for him to be allowed to go. Flashback. It was early evening when Naruto went up to the Raikage's office. The only reason he was meeting A at this time was because of the 2 D-rank missions he had to do, as well as the early morning training with Samui and the mid-afternoon training with the rest of his team. He spotted Mabui finishing up filing some paperwork when she spotted him. Mabui asked Naruto on why he was here, which he explained to her that he needed to speak with A about something. Mabui agreed to see if the Raikage would see him now or tomorrow morning. After some waiting, Mabui said that it would meet him now, which he was happy about. Once inside, it looked at Naruto to see that he had a serious face. "So Naruto, why do you want to meet me at this time of the night?" asked A. "I was hoping for you to allow a mission that I want you to approve." Answer Naruto. "What mission would that be?" Question A. "The approval of you to allow me to go to Yuzu no Kuni." Answer Naruto. A asked on why he want to go to Yuzu no Kuni. Naruto explained that he want to go and see if he can find any type of jutsu or Fuinjutsu that he can learn. A explained that Kumo has already sent a few shinobi teams in the past to see if they can find anything as well, but came back empty-handed. Naruto nodded, but then said, "Really? Well, did any of those teams have an Uzumaki with them?" Asking A. "Well, no, why does that matter?" Answered A. "Well, if my family was known to be the most skillful in Fuinjutsu, then it would only make sense that only those from the main branch from his family would be able to find or open any kind of lock or door with their blood," said Naruto. A thought for a bit since it did make sense, plus what Naruto said about all the teams that Kumo sent didn't have an Uzumaki in their team. In fact, Kumo never had an Uzumaki in their village until Naruto came into it. "Well, you do have a point there," said as he continued to think about Naruto's request. Naruto stayed quiet since he saw that it was really thinking about it, which he hoped that it would let him go. He decided to add one more enticement for A to allow this request. "Raikage-sama," getting A's attention. "You remember that you told me about my parents, my father being the Yondaime Hokage, my mother, the former Jinchuriki of Kyubi, as well as the possible heir of the Uzumaki clan. You know that my father was said to have been on somewhat equal terms in Fuinjutsu as the Uzumaki clan. Knowing my father, he probably left my inheritance to the third, but probably made sure that only someone from his family could open it since Konoha has yet to use the Hiraishin no Jutsu on all the other countries, especially people who want to like Danzo and the other members of the council," stated Naruto. I took Naruto's words seriously since he made a good point, but stopped when Naruto continued to talk. "It is very doubtful that I can get my father's will, as well as my inheritance from Konoha now, which includes the Jutsu, but also any of the Fuinjutsu that my father and mother left for me to learn. That's why I need to go to Yuzu no Kuni to find anything from my ancestors, the Uzumaki clan," finished Naruto. With that, they agreed to Naruto's request on letting him go to Yuzu no Kuni. "Naruto, you will leave for Yuzu no Kuni in 2 days. You will leave with your team, Team 9, but instead of B who will lead, it will be led by Yujito, as well as C, for not only medical support, but also for backup since he'll be traveling near Kuni, where Konoha shinobi are located. Seda. Naruto was glad to hear that A agreed to his mission. A declared Naruto's request for his personal mission to a C-rank mission. Before Naruto left, A gave Naruto a special mask that had not only hide his face from any Konoha shinobi, but also has a seal that prevents Hyuga from seeing through the mask. With that, Naruto left to get ready. In flashback, as Naruto continued to prepare on getting to his ancestors' former land, he also took the time to practice his elemental training that Killer Bee started him and his team a month ago. Last month, after they completed a simple D-rank mission, Killer Bee decided to teach them about their elemental affinity training. Once he did, Killer Bee found out on which affinity they have. Karui had lighting and earth affinity. Omoi also had lightning affinity. Samui had both water and lightning affinity. As the rest were glad to know their affinities they were surprised to see on what Naruto had. Naruto had wind, lightning, and water affinity. With that, Killer Bee started on teaching them on how to harness their abilities. For the past couple of weeks on his free time, Naruto trained on his wind as well as lightning affinity. In 1 month time, Naruto was able to master the leaf-cutting technique with his hands that another shinobi in Kumo had taught him since Killer Bee doesn't have wind affinity. Currently, Naruto was still practicing on perfecting his leaf-cutting technique to make sure that it felt like second nature to him. Naruto had already mastered his lightning training back when he was still in the academy, since Killer Bee had taught him the lightning clone jutsu. Naruto continued to train on his wind technique until Yujito got everyone's attention. She informed them that they were a day away to the dock that was in the border of Kuni, where they will take a ship to the former Yuzu no Kuni. Yujito then turned to Naruto. You do know what this means? Yujito looked at Naruto. No matter what happens, you must keep that mask on until we get back to Kumo, since we'll be entering a village where Konoha shinobi roam around. If any of them, no matter how unlikely, was able to recognize you, they'll try anything to get you back, even with our treaty with them. Yujito finished, while narrowing her eyes, which Naruto knows that she meant that Konoha will want to take back the Kyuubi. Naruto nodded, agreeing with Yujito's orders. After explaining the situation as well as giving Naruto the code name In, they all continued to their destination. Night. The seas were calm as the moonless night sky made the diamond light stars were the only dazzling lights right now. As the night stars showed the amazing beauty of the night sky, which many would wonder in amazement, one wasn't fully enjoying what the stars was giving. Naruto was now standing at the top deck of the ship that he was riding. As he looked at the night sky, his thoughts were on something else. He was thinking about on what he will find in Yuzu no Kuni, as well as seeing his clan's old homeland. It has been 2 days and nights since he and his team set sailed towards Yuzu no Kuni. After getting toward the seaport, they ran into a couple of Konoha shinobi, but with the pass that C had that was signed by the Raikage, there wasn't much trouble except the occasional Konoha shinobi looking at them. Once they found a ship that would take them to Yuzu no Kuni, they took the ship and were now on their way on a 3-day, 2-night sea voyage. As Naruto continued to think, his thoughts were interrupted when someone walked up behind him and tapped his shoulder. He turned to see that it was Samui that came behind him. With the night sky, Naruto thought on how beautiful Samui looked to him right now, with her eyes matching the starlight sky. Samui also thought the same thing since, even though she mentally denied it, she couldn't help but stare at Naruto's face, which had a mature look on it right now, with his eyes showing the emotions that are in his soul. Samui broke the awkward silence between them. Naruto said, "It's late in the evening, you know. You should get some rest now. It would be uncool to stay up so late since tomorrow. We'll reach Yuzu no Kuni tomorrow." Samui stated, "I know, but there's so many things that are running through my mind right now," said Naruto. "Like what?" Samui asked curiously. "It's hard to explain. It's just that I will be reaching my family's ancestral village that got me thinking about some things." Answer Naruto. "You mean that you think you might be desecrating them by taking items and stuff like that from their burial ground or something? It's cool. I can understand that since this is more personal gain for you than honoring them. Is it something like that? Asked Samui. No, it's not that, even though there's some truth on what you said, but it isn't that. What I'm thinking about is not my ancestors, but my family, said Naruto. Samui was confused about it, but stopped when Naruto continued. You see, before our Jinin graduation exam, the Raikage held up the end of our bet, since it was obvious that I will become Rookie of the Year. He told me who were my parents, which stunned me, since I already knew my father, either though I was too stubborn to put two to two together, or I just didn't want to believe it. Samui was stunned to know that the Raikage had told Naruto on whose his parents are, since for the longest time, she was just as curious on who were Naruto's parents. Her thoughts were interrupted as Naruto looked at her. Samui-chan, even though you probably won't admit it or not, you're my best friend. Can you keep this a secret from everyone until I decide to tell them? Samui nodded in agreement. You see, my parents' names are Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, said Naruto. I see. So they are your parents. I don't know about this Kushina, but I have heard your father's name before. I just don't know from where, said Samui. You see, my father was the strongest and fastest man alive, even faster than the Raikage. He was the Yondaime Hokage, Naruto said seriously. Samui was stunned to know that Naruto was the son of Konoha's strongest Hokage. What stunned her next was what Naruto said next about his mother, as well as himself. My mother. She was the former Jinchuriki of Kyubi, which it is now sealed inside me. Samui just stood there next to him, as she can tell from all the time she trained and hang out with him that this was something serious, both mental and emotional. Samui then saw Naruto, turned around to hide the tears that were starting to come down from Naruto's face. She then heard him say things like on how could his own father seal the fox inside him, why both his parents died, and leaving him alone with the curse that they placed on him. How could they, or the third Hokage, leave him alone in a village that constantly beat and torture him? There were so many questions that he wanted answered, but knew that no matter what, he will never get an answer. Samui saw Naruto's sadness and barrier in his heart fall apart as he let out the tears that he has been holding for a while. Naruto felt the tears on his face fall to the ground, which he thought he finally settled his issues, but turned out that he just buried them inside his heart for the time being, but started to awaken when he was going to use a no Kuni in his family's homeland. Naruto was starting to let everything go, which he suddenly felt Samui grab him to turn him around, which she hugged him tightly. For Samui, this was weird since she would have never done this for anyone. She would have just left them alone, but with Naruto, she just had this urge to comfort him. Naruto was surprised at what Samui was hugging him since. Like Samui, he thought that Samui would just leave him alone to deal with it. Samui just held him tightly as he cried in her arms. They were like that until Samui felt Naruto just cry himself to sleep, which she just quietly and softly laid him near a safe position on deck. She found a blanket that was nearby and placed it over the both of them, which Samui slept with her back on the deck wall, while placing Naruto next to her. Morning. Right now, the morning sun was shining bright when Yujito and the other woke up. As they were waking up, they overheard Karui say that Naruto and Samui weren't in their hang beds. All of them went out into the ship's deck to see if they were already up. They looked around for a bit until Yujito found them, which she informed the others as well as tell them to be quiet. They walked towards Yujito to see what she was seeing. In front of them, they saw Naruto sleeping peacefully with his left arm wrapped around Samui, bringing her closer to him, while Samui slept with her head lying next to his neck. She also had her left arm on Naruto's chest near his heart. Everyone had to admit that it was a sweet to see them in such a cute position. Yujito told them to let them sleep for a bit longer until she can get a picture of them like this. Morning. It was a normal morning for Team 9, besides the fact that Samui threatened them to not tell anyone about this morning's little sleeping incident with the threat of death with her very cold eyes on them, which they agreed, but Yujito planned to use the photo she had as blackmail or insurance. After breakfast, everyone prepared to get themselves ready, since in a few hours they'll be reaching Yuzu no Kuni in a few hours. During that time, Everyone looked out into the ocean to see the amazing whirlpools that made Yuzu no Kuni famous. It's because of these whirlpools that made the voyage a little harder to complete since the ship had to be steered carefully to avoid being sucked into the constant whirlpools. Noon. Currently, everyone were walking along the beach as they made their way towards the path that will lead them to the Edi village that the former Uzumaki clan lived. They used the path that previous teams used to get to the village. As everyone was walking, the genin were surprised to see how this place was recovering naturally with nature, since they can still see some remnants of the previous shinobi war that destroyed Yuzu no Kuni. For Naruto, it was a reminder on where he came from, since he at least knows where half his family started out. Once they made it to the point where former Kumo teams went, they started to make their way inland, where the Edi village was located. Edi village. Everyone looked around to see the amazing ruins that were able to stand the test of time and war. This is the first time for everyone to be in the Edi village. Naruto taking it all in, since this was his ancestors' home, which he couldn't help but feel some bit of ecstatic and saddened, since this is a place where almost all his family has died, while the rest just spread out throughout the elemental continent. After taking it all in, everyone decided to set up camp first before they start exploring the place. Yujito ordered that today will be a day for preparation, since she wanted everyone to be safe first before they start exploring and searching the former village in complete detail. Naruto and C set up camp for everyone, tents, a campfire for later, the whole set. Samui and Yujito went to get fresh water from a river that was nearby. Finally, Karui and Omoi went outside the campground to set up any type of alert traps so they could be alarmed if anyone unwelcome comes close to them. After a couple of hours of setting up and preparing escape routes of any kind, as well as secret gathering site for emergency, the recovery team settled down for the night, since it was starting to get sunset. Night. Everyone was sitting around the campfire, as they had an entertaining night for them. C had brought some playing cards to play with that night. Everyone played a couple of card games, like matching, shedding, blackjack, and poker, which Naruto always win in poker. It was late at night, as everyone was turning in for tomorrow, except C, who was doing first watch for the night until he passes it on to Yujito to begin their excavation on the ruined village. Naruto was the last one to stay up. He sat near the campfire as he was deep in thought. It was then that he felt someone coming up behind him. He turned to see Samui, looking at him with her cool expression, which didn't show much, but Naruto knew her well enough to know what she felt. "Hey Samui, aren't you going to bed now?" Naruto asked. "I'll be going to sleep in a moment. I'm more curious on why you aren't going to bed yet. It's cool to stay up for a bit, but it's uncool if you stay up all night," said Samui. "I know. I'm just thinking about something before I go to sleep. Actually, Samui, I'm glad that you're still up for a bit," Naruto stated. "Yeah, why is that?" asked Samui. "Because I wanted to thank you for what you did for me yesterday night," answered Naruto. "For what I did, what is that I did?" Samui asked curiously. "For listening to me last night, for you just letting me rant on what I was holding deep inside my heart. You know, when I first heard about who my parents are, I thought I had settled it after we had that break from the graduation exam. But it looks like I didn't, since the closer I got here, the more it bubbled out into the surface," Naruto explained. Samui nodded, since she could understand. She knows that when a person wants answers to themselves, they want it, but it is impossible to answer question when the person who had the answers are dead, so you intend to think on the worst-case scenarios and such. Naruto continued on by thanking her for the hug as well, since he felt he needed, which Samui nodded in response, which she still wondered on why she did that. After some more light conversation, Naruto decided to hit the sack for tomorrow, which Samui did the same. Morning. Naruto was walking through some of the old ruins of building that would have likely been used as temples or something. As he walking around, he carefully checked every possible nook and cranny that he can see. He has been checking around old building like this for the past 2 hours. After first light, and everyone had breakfast, they all split up to go search the areas to see if they can find anything out of the ordinary. The Edi village that they were on was a large area that would take about 3 days of careful search. The village was located near south of the center of a group of islands that make up Yuzu no Kuni. As Naruto searched, Samui was near him, also looking for any type of seal or symbol that would show. Not far from their location, Karui was with Yujito, who was searching all the empty homes that were covered with moss, overgrown vines, and such. C and Omoi were looking around the terrain to see if anything sticks out. Naruto had just finished searching the building, which he turned to Samui to see that she found nothing. Naruto sighed as he looked out to see the river that was close by the village. The river itself was also amazing since there were a couple of powerful, rapid-moving whirlpools going along the stream that led to the ocean on the opposite side of the island where they landed. As he looked at the whirlpools, his gut was telling him that there was something going on in the whirlpools that he wasn't seeing. He put that thought at the back of his mind and continued on searching the next building with Samui. 2 days later. It has been 3 days since they arrived, and nothing. Everyone was exhausted from all the searching that they went through. From every corner of the former village, they found nothing. Even the notes from the past team that they had about possible sealed places where Naruto checked with his blood were complete duds. Man, what a waste of our time. 3 days of searching and nothing. Karui complained as she showed her frustration by waving her arms up into the air. I know this has been time-consuming, but we had to search every part of the village since unlike the others' teams, Naruto is the only Uzumaki that Kyumo ever had, plus as far we know he is the heir of the Uzumaki clan. Said C. With that, Yujito said that the mission has been completed with no success of digging up any kind of treasure. With that, Yujito ordered them to start packing up since their ride back to the mainland will arrive at sunset for them to be picked up. As everyone was starting to pick up everything up, Naruto just looked at the whirlpools and realized something. We did check every part of this village, which includes the mission reports on past teams on possible sealed hiding spot, but nothing. But more curious is that the whirlpools are turning in a clockwise when we're in the southern part of the equator. That's IT, Naruto thought in realization. Naruto quickly went over to Yujito's backpack and took out a long rope that was 25 yards long. He quickly but gently took off all his clothes until he only had on his swimsuit he was wearing underneath his clothes. He tied the rope around his waist, then ran towards the river immediately, but left the other end of the rope around a large boulder near the river. Yujito and the others were wondering on what Naruto was doing. Karui blushed a bit when she saw Naruto stripped off his clothes, only wearing his swimsuit. Everyone then saw him tied the rope onto a boulder near the river edge and around himself. They were then stunned to see him jump into the river, going into the center of the whirlpool. As Naruto swam towards the rapid moving whirlpool, he took a bite on his right thumb to let some of his blood drip out. Once he was inside the whirlpool's current, he swam with it to make it easier to swim underneath and reach the bottom of the river. Even though it was the river was about 4 meters deep and 10 meters long. As Naruto reached the bottom, he quickly summoned 2 of his arrows to use as claws to hold onto the bottom. As he crawled towards middle with his arrows, he was having trouble holding his breath. He would use his churka to help him, but with the ground so soft and unstable, plus with the rapid moving water, he can't even walk on it since he yet to start water walking training. Once he reached the middle, he quickly checked around the area where the water was the most violent. It was around this time that he is running out of breath. He continues to search until he hits something with his arrow. He quickly started to dig on what he hit to see something slick but carved. He dug to find some kind of chest. As he touched it, the blood on his thumb hit a certain part on the chest, which did something around the whirlpool. The whirlpool's rushing water started to subside. The water was calmed enough for him to untie the rope around him and tie around the chest. Once he tied the rope around the chest, he swam to the surface where he spotted Yujito and the others. Yujito and the others watched as Naruto swam underneath the water. They waited for a bit until they saw the water calm down and him coming out of the water, gasping for air. He then yelled out, "Pull the rope." They then saw him dive back down under the water. C and Omoi did what Naruto said, which they started to pull. Karui, Samui, and Yujito watched as they saw them struggling to bring whatever object that Naruto found. As they were pulling, they noticed the whirlpool started to increase in strength and speed, which made it harder. Karui and Yujito helped pulled, as well as Samui waited for Naruto to come out. After a bit of pulling, they saw Naruto standing on the shallow part of the water while helping drag in the chest that he found. C and Omoi helped Naruto get the chest onto the shore, while Samui gave Naruto a towel to help dry up. Once the chest was on shore, Yujito and C expected it for a bit to see anything on it. They then saw the Uzumaki symbol on the center of the lock. It was then that Yujito said, "Mission complete, status, successfully found item." Smiled. It looks like our time here was not a complete waste after all. Good work, Naruto. Praise C. Thanks, said Naruto. All right, let's open this sucker up, stated Karui. Karui used her sword to try to open it, but when her sword contacted it, it glowed, then electrified Karui, which stunned her. Omoi looked at Karui, who was on the ground, saying, "A defense seal is placed on it, I bet. Guess it's what you get for rushing forward without checking it out," which Karui just glared at Omoi. Naruto checked the seal on the lock to see what it had. Yujito and C also checked to see on what Naruto was doing. Naruto sighed. As far as I can tell, this is a pretty powerful seal designed to keep anyone from opening. If we had a powerful seal master, we'd probably be able to get it open. The only way I can think on getting this opened is we need the key. Yujito and C also agreed since, even though they know little on Fuinjutsu, they do know that this was a masterpiece of Fuinjutsu. Naruto looked at the lock to see that they needed an octagon gem-like key that had the Uzumaki symbol in the center. With this, Yujito ordered C to take Karui and Samui to finish up taking down camp, while under Naruto's suggestion the rest will follow the river to see if they can find the key or anything to help them. Naruto, Yujito, and Omoi followed the river until they reached the ocean while also looking at the river to see if anything odd about it. As they searched, Omoi spotted a small gleam at a distance from another nearby island. He pointed out to Naruto and Yujito, which Yujito brought out her binoculars to see what it was. She spotted a boat with people on it. With this, Yujito suggested they help clean up on the campsite and then go check on the island to see what is going on after they secure their ship to stay put for a bit. Night. After cleaning up the campsite, everyone except C went to island that Yujito suggested going. Currently, C was staying at the vessel that was going to take them back to the mainland to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. He was also there for a bit of guard duty. Once it became dark, Team 9 and Yujito silently paddled a small boat that their ship had over the water, silently to avoid any detection. They made it to the island to see a group of people moving boxes around and such. Naruto was enraged since he can see that the place they are in was a burial ground, which they were desecrating, especially when he saw some of the graves had Uzumaki symbols. Yujito decided to take action since she thought that this burial site might have a clue to the key that they need. Naruto was more than glad to take care of these men. Naruto ready his bow to fight, while Samui, Karui, Omoi, and Yujito prepare for sneak attack. Naruto shot the first arrow, which started the attack. Later, Naruto was walking through the burial ground to see what he can find and salvage, since these men almost completely desecrating most of his family resting place. After his team took care of the dozen men that were on this island, they quickly tied them up and got the guy in charge of them. It turned out that these men were importing and trading drugs, while using this island as a base of operation for storage. As he walked around the graveyards, he found the oldest of the graves have thankfully not been touched yet. As he checked the eldest graves, he spotted something on one of them. In the center of these graves, one of them had the symbol of the key that was needed in the chest. He quickly checked it to see that this grave was disturbed like the more recent graves that the men of the drug operation. He saw that the vines were torn off around the new vines that had overgrown it. He guessed that someone took what he guesses was the key to the chest. He quickly went to the men that Yujito and the others that they captured. He walked up to the one that was still conscious. "You, tell me, Who are you working for? Who's your boss? Ordered Naruto. I'm not going to tell you a thing, you brat. The guy said before looking at Yujito with a sneer, unless you can make it worth my while. Which Yujito felt disgusted as she saw the man looking at her with lust in his eyes. Naruto was quiet for a moment before saying, worth your while, huh? How this worth your while? Which he then grabbed the man. He dragged the man by his leg while preparing his shinobi wire. He looped the wire over a strong tree branch, 3 stories up, and tied it around the man's leg. He then proceeds to lift the man until he was upside down. Is this worth your while? Asked Naruto as he watched the man hanging upside down. You actually believe that this will intimidate me? Said the hostage, while he's starting to feel the blood rushing up his head. No, but this will, said Naruto. He pulled the wire so the man's feet touched the branch, but let it go instantly, which dropped the man. He dropped back first, then the rest of him. He screamed, going down, but then started to groan in pain as Naruto began to lift him again. Still not talking because I can keep doing this all day long, or I can let my 3 girlfriends over here decide on how to give you a good time, Naruto stated as point with his thumb at Yujito, Samui, and Karui, who looked like they were ready to practice some torture techniques. The man was starting to get dizzy with the blood rushing towards his head, which only increased with the now back pain. After a couple of more minutes of torture, he was ready to talk. Okay, what do you want to know? Pleaded the man. Who's your boss and where is he right now? Questioned Naruto. His name is Gatu, and he is in Nami no Kuni now, the man said as he gasped for air. Gatu, wondered Naruto. I've heard of that name. Yujito said, getting everyone attention. He is businessman who owns a shipping company. It seems with this, he is also working on the underground drug trade as well. I wonder why he's in Nami no Kuni, asked Omoi. Naruto just looked at the man to bring him towards his face by his collar and asked the same thing. He's there to kill someone, a bridge builder. That's all I know, said the henchman. With that, Yujito went behind the guy and knocked him out. With that, they quickly tied him up along with his other cronies and left. They made it to the boat where C and their captain for the voyage. After they set sail, everyone started to discuss about the information they have now. So, what did you guys found out? Questioned C. We may have found where the key might be for our little problem here, answered Yujito, which she pulled out the scroll that had the chest that Naruto found. What are we going to do then, Yujito Taicho? Asked Karui. Well, Yujito thought for a moment. Well, first we'll notify Konoha about the drug dealers that are in Yuzuno Kuni, but of course we won't tell them on what happened to their cargo, stated Yujito, which she stared at Naruto, who smiled sheepily as he went and destroyed all of the drug dealers' cargo to get back for desecrating the graves. Yujito then continued on, you'll take Karui and the chest back to Kyumo to be guarded until we returned, as well as to give the Raikage a report on what's going on. Karui will come along with you as an extra pair of eyes, since I get the feeling about something which I can't explain. C nodded in understanding, while Karui smiled because she gets to go home a little earlier. Yujito then said, as you two are going back to Kyumo, the rest of us will head for Nami no Kuni and hopefully find the bridge builder before Gata does. If we find him first, we'll be able to find Gatu and get the key or where it's possible whereabouts, said Yujito. Everyone nodded in agreement, which Naruto was glad to know that if they get there first, he can get the key to open up his family's chest open and continue the legacy of the Uzumaki family. Unknown to Naruto and the others, the Sandaime Hokage was preparing to give a mission to a certain team. The mission request that the Sandaime was going to give was to Team 7 led by Kakashi Hatake. Kakashi's team consists of the last and heir of the Uchiha heir, Sasuke Uchiha. His team also has Sakura Haruun, the top kunoichi of the year, while the third and final member was the secret Jinchuriki of Sanbai, Ko. Alright, then Kakashi. If you say your team is ready for a higher mission, this C-class mission will be a good start for them, stated the Sandaime Hokage. He explained to them that they will protect the bridge builder Tizuna from any type of bandits, and such until he completes the mission. You know the story here. After the explanation, the Sandame introduced them to their employer, whose name was Tazuna. With that, Team 7 left later that day. With this event, both Konoha and Kyumo teams are going to have a wild time. Konoha team. It has been a couple of days since Kakashi and Team 7 left Konoha in the protection mission for Tazuna. They were currently traveling to Nami no Kuni on a boat, which was the only way to get there. During the boat trip, he can't help but think about what has happened recently with his team. He first thought about his team and how they barely became Konoha Genin. He gave them the entire bell test, which they all failed. Of course, he gave him a second chance, which Sasuke and Ko were able to get the part of teamwork, which Sakura followed their lead from their act of kindness or whatever. Once he passed them, he worked hard on all of them on improving their teamwork before he can teach them anything to do with ninjutsu. As he thought about his little Genin team, his eyes turned to all of them and thought about each one. Sakura Haruna was the Kunoichi of the year this year in the Ninja Academy. For a while now, he noticed that Sakura was more into diets and looking good for Sasuke than actually training to become a true Kunoichi. Of course, Kakashi knows that she has excellent chakra control as well as great potential in Genjutsu, but that's if Sakura can get rid of that fangirl stage of hers. She can be an excellent Kunoichi. Next was Sasuke, who Kakashi knows that he needs a lot of help. What Kakashi meant about help, it was to help Sasuke let go of his revenge thing. He remembers the Uchiha incident very well. After that incident, he saw the psychological reports on how Sasuke wants revenge on his brother and became a very broody and solitary person who doesn't want any kind of help from anyone, along with wanting power. Finally was Ko, which was a special case for. Ko, which he knows, is Konoha's newest Jinchuriki. He was shocked when the Sandame told him about Ko, that he is the Jinchuriki of Sanbai. Flashback. Kakashi was in the Hokage's office when the third told him about Ko. You mean to tell me that Ko is a Jinchuriki, just like Naruto? After what happened with Naruto, you actually created another Jinchuriki, stated Kakashi. Kakashi was one of the few that didn't see Naruto as the Kyuubi. In fact, he was one of the few shinobi that look after him when he had the chance. Unfortunately, the day Naruto was killed by the mob of bloodlust and vengeful villagers, he was on a mission. So when he found out that Naruto had been killed and saw how the villagers were completely happy, he couldn't help but think on how this village had somehow lost some of their dignity. In fact, the times that he visits the monument that had the names of all the shinobi that died as heroes for the village. As he stared at it, his always thought, Obito, I'm sorry I couldn't protect Rin. Sensei forgives me for not protecting your legacy. Now, Kakashi was being told that if he was being Ko's newest sensei, who is the Jinchuriki of the Sanbai. The Sandame has told him the whole story about Ko, who isn't just a Jinchuriki, but also from one of Danzo's disbanded root program. So, it was because of the elders that you proceed to make another Jinchuriki? Questioned Kakashi. Yes, even though I was against this, they were also right about it, said Sarutobi. They took a moment of silence before the third spoke again. Kakashi, the reason I'm not only placing Sasuke as your team, but also Ko since you can train Sasuke on his Sharingan when he awakens it. But also keep an eye on Ko, since you may be able to handle him if he goes out of control, but also see what Danzo has been doing with him. Kakashi understand on why the Sandame put Sasuke and Ko under his command. In flashback, for the past month, Kakashi oversaw KO's training, but noticed that he hasn't been so open about himself. He acted more like one of Danzo's root agents, as well as notices him taking in any information about Sasuke. As he looked upon Ko, he can't help but think that it should be Naruto on his team, since unlike Ko, from the times he has seen Naruto, he can tell that Naruto had a lot of drive and determination that many powerful shinobi have, like the Sandame, Jiraiya, and his deceased sensei, the Yondaime Hokage. Kakashi's thought turned from his Genin team and his past mistakes to the mission at hand. After 2 days of leaving Konoha, Kakashi and his team were ambushed by 2 rogue nin. Naturally, he decided to test his Genin to see how well they react. He was impressed that both Sasuke and Ko defeated both the rogues without much difficulty, while Sakura was smart enough to guard Tazuna. It wasn't after interrogating Tazuna a bit that he found about Tazuna's lie on the mission request. You all know the story. After some discussion, Kakashi asked his genin on what course of action they should take. Naturally, Ko decided to go back to the village, since he is someone who follows the rules, as well as following Danzo's own orders on not wasting his time on trivial things like right or wrong if it wasn't for the village's sake. Sasuke voted on going on with the mission since he got excited on fighting more shinobi to help increase his strength, as well as gain more power out of it. Sakura also agreed to continue the mission. Even though she was a little scared, she will follow Sasuke anywhere and agree with him on anything like a lost little puppy.